Hello, all. Welcome. Welcome to Thursday night generational change. Just going to wait for some people to hop on here. Yeah, Peter will be here in a second. So, yeah, we have a really good show tonight. We have Julie Oliver and Mike Siegel from Ground Game, Texas. These are former BNC slate mates who ran for Congress in Texas. And then we are also going to be talking with Jordan Chariton, who has been traveling around and really investigating the housing crisis that we're really seeing right now that is not being covered by mainstream media. So that's a really important thing to talk about. We have some really great news to go over. And apparently, we have a special guest coming. Yeah, I almost feel like this is what I feel like for Florida too. I'd really be happy if we could sort of shift our party a little to the left. We're going to talk with Julie and Mike. They're obviously trying to do that in Texas. And we'll see. I lived in Texas for 6 years in San Antonio, and the person who would be my representative right now, who was my representative then, is a POS named Henry Cuellar. And he is actually one of just a few anti-choice Democrats sitting in Congress. That's who is the congressional representative for San Antonio. So, yeah, I would like to see that move in the correct direction as well. Okay. So, Peter, are you... Hi, Declan. Yep. We have a special guest, I think, that's getting ready to come on. And this is very current and newsworthy because I think this just happened today. So I think this is really a big deal. So I think, and this could be an exclusive. I'm not entirely sure. This could be like a really exclusive interview. So let's see what happens. Let me see if I could figure it out. Okay. Hi, all. All right. We're ready. Hello, Mr. Trump.
Hello to you too, Jen. I really don't want to be here right now. I've escaped New York and I'm in Florida. I can't leave Florida. Remember, there's no extradition to New York from Florida.
No, but you're hanging out, your chief financial officer, I see. What's his name? Weisselberg. Is Weisselberg going to take the whole fall for you now? Is that it?
I have plenty of fall guys. It's not just one. It could be many. I'm not saying who they are, but it's all fake news. They're coming after our organization for no good reason. We didn't do anything wrong. We just made America great again, and they really hate it. They want to change it back to make it really terrible, and they're coming after us.
It looks like your organization is being accused of allowing certain employees to substantially understate their compensation.
We're paying
so as to avoid paying taxes.
Oh no, we're totally paying them fairly. That way we don't have to pay any taxes. That's the rules, and we stay by the rules. We never break the rules. That's why I don't pay taxes, because we pay our workers very, very, very fairly.
Well, according to the prosecutors, your organization has evaded more than $900,000 in federal, state, and city taxes.
Oh, what's $900,000? I paid over $38 million in taxes one year. That was a lot of back taxes being made up for. But believe me when I tell you, $900,000, that's nothing. How many people in this country make $900,000 every single year? Plenty of people. Tremendous amounts of people, because everyone's successful in the world I live in. What world are you living in? A really, really terrible world. I live in a great world.
I don't know if you want to plead your case or whatever it is you want to do. I think that this is just the beginning for you.
Here's what's going to happen. We're totally we're going to beat the case. We've beaten lots before. We're going to beat this one. That's why I'm going around the country. I'm going around the country right now, and I'm doing all kinds of rallies, and they're really incredible. If you've seen them, our crowds are great. People are excited. They all think I'm going to run again, and they're giving us all kinds of money. And that money's going to pay for all of the court fees. They understand what's going on here. They know they're making me out to be I'm a martyr. I'm a big martyr. They just want to put my head on a stick. That's what they're doing, Jen. It's totally not fair.
Yeah, I wasn't even paying attention to this. I actually don't watch news about that.
But you are the lawyer. I should hire you for my team. You're also a Jewish lawyer. Jewish lawyers are really good. They're really, really good. They have always got me out of trouble. Would you like to join my team? I know you'd make our team really great. Want to join the team, Jen?
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm definitely not
You're
worthy.
totally going to be compensated fairly. You might even get paid in a couple of years. Can you believe it? That would be really incredible, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, I'm going to say no. I'm going to hard pass on that.
Well, you're not making me very happy right now, Jen. No one says no to.
All right. Well, you know what, though? But we have like a lot of stuff to cover tonight. So, you know.
Do you know what's going to happen when this case is over? My nickname, the Teflon Don, it's finally going to stick. It's a great nickname. It sounds really great. It sounds very powerful. And I'm a powerful
We're losing viewers by the second, dude.
Oh, trust me when I tell you, they're all coming back. They'll be coming back because they all want to talk to me. But anyway, I'm getting a call. They're saying that I can't stay very long because I might, what's that word called when you say too much and they can use it against you in the court of law?
Yes, it's self-incrimination.
Well, I've never heard of such a thing, and there's no way I can incriminate myself because I never did anything wrong. I'm a totally, totally incredible guy. Really great guy. Nothing wrong. And we're going to beat the case, and we're going to make America great again when I run, maybe, for president. But if the agreement is that I don't have to run again, but the charges get dropped, maybe that's the way it has to be. Who knows? But you know who is making America great again? Ron DeSantis. Really incredible guy. Did you know he's our governor? Did you know that?
I do know that. Yeah. And unfortunately for us, it's not looking like there's anybody on the other side to challenge him that's worthy.
That's because no one wants to get in the way of the Trump train or the DeSantis Trump train, or in this case, the Trump DeSantis train. Twice as powerful, twice as exciting, twice as incredible. You know, you want to join it. 2024 around the corner. We'll see you soon. Bye, guys. Ayo. And I'm not a.
Sorry about that, people. It was definitely not my idea. I can assure you, I am so sick of all things Trump. Like, I honestly didn't even know that happened. That his organization was indicted, but.
Yeah, but the truth is he's not going down. I mean, they'll probably end up paying a fine. But like I said, I think the most that could end up happening is a backroom deal that basically says he can't run for president again. Like, that would basically be, you know, the most that I think would end up occurring. I mean, I know this is all just like catnip for the MSNBC, CNN crowd, but.
Like, I just don't even, I got to be honest. Here's
the main reason why
I just don't care.
Well, here's the thing. You should care. The reason I do care is because I want to see Trump go down, because I want there to be a precedent set so that way you can go after every crook on Capitol Hill. But that's the thing. They don't want to do that. So this is all a dog and pony show. If you can get one, you should be able to get them all. And they don't want that. They don't want you to be able to get everybody. So obviously we've got news and amuse to cover. Some very important topics, I would assume, that we can really hit on. I think, you know, look, the Assange case has completely fallen apart. When there is witness tampering, as soon as that happens, any great team will figure out a way to, at least in a just system, of course, would figure out a way to just get the case tossed. Attorney, please speak. Share your thoughts on that.
You know, this is something that it's not even remotely surprising, because the people that are in the know on this know that the case against Assange was bogus. And we know that there isn't any evidence that he is the person who encouraged Chelsea Manning or helped her hack into the system or do anything. And that's what they're trying to get. So obviously, whoever it is that they had as a witness, or that they used as a witness to say that this is something that there was evidence of, they weren't able to find it. But those of us who know are not surprised at all, because there is no evidence, because that didn't happen. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to gradually unravel. But this also might be a way that they're going to do it and sort of save face. Now it'll be like, okay, it's not that we're going to drop the charges against Assange. It's that, oh, wow, it wasn't really that, you know. So This is a way for the case to go away. They see that they see the writing on the wall with this. This is a way for it to go away without them looking like total hacks.
Yeah,
So
because what
that's
they're
what it
basically
looks
going
like
to do
to
is
me.
they're just going to throw they're basically trying to throw this, I mean, this guy, like we talked about the other day, is probably, a CIA witness who just, he's a spook. He just gives them information and, keeps tabs on different people. And they wanted to use him as a means to, getting to Assange. And again, this happens all the time. There's all different types of nefarious people that commit various crimes, and, our shadow government takes them under their wing and basically says, look, you're going to work for us and you're going to get us information or we're going to take you down. And so I guess from this guy's perspective, I think he's from Scandinavia, and basically was like, all right, I'll give you whatever you want to hear. Basically, they had that scene in The Godfather Part 2 when Pantangeli is testifying and he says, I made up some stuff for the FBI and they wanted to believe this and that. And the truth is, that's just kind of how it happens. They make up a bunch of stuff so they don't have to go down because, again, Assange has completely, peeled the mask off of our deep state in many ways. And I'm not saying that there aren't a lot of people who just are, it's kind of like, there's a lot of people in this country who follow politics and just accept the system as it is, and they just don't want to rock the boat.
But while we're speaking of Assange, people, if you haven't done it yet, please call the Department of Justice comment line.
Yeah.
We will, it's probably not there because we weren't necessarily planning for this, but we do have a script that is available and it is attached to a couple of other videos. When we put this up, I'll put it on there. But guys, all you have to do, call the Department of Justice comment line, tell the Attorney General, tell Merrick Garland to drop the case against Julian Assange, that we do not want them to pursue this case. It's really very easy. It's leaving a message, say your name, where you're from, say, please do not prosecute Julian Assange.
Speaking of,
so if you haven't done it, please do it.
Speaking of leaving messages, and even though it's not part of our news and amuse, I mean, we could talk about her pretty much every show, but Kirsten Sinema, we all know what a horrific reputation.
No, she is part of our story. She's part of Storytime tonight.
Oh, okay. Well,
she's in that group that's involved in Storytime.
Yeah, but here's the thing. This is not part of Storytime. This is something else that came out today. Oh. It's not really surprising, though. She has a horrific reputation as a senator in regards to her staff. She treats her staff like absolute dog crap, and that's not, again, it's not surprising. It's pretty much expected in many ways. But even some of the worst representatives don't necessarily have a reputation of not dealing well with their subordinates. And the fact that she, on top of everything else, treats her workers terribly. Hey, listen, in a lot of ways, I don't have any sympathy. I really don't, because she's a manufactured candidate of all of the wine moms around the country who were hell bent on
terrible.
Getting.
Like, this is why, like, I don't like to talk about it because I don't like to give it publicity. So why are you adding this?
But I just hope that I just hope that she becomes more or less, the poster child for. You have to vet the candidates properly. And you also have to recognize that corporate special interest money behind candidates is going to become a problem.
Well, it hasn't been a problem for Joe Manchin, and it might not be a problem for her. So we'll see.
Well, not as of now, but the more we keep building the movement, the more people are not going to tolerate this crap. And that's something we could, and that's theoretically something we could talk about with Mike and Julie when they come on. So as it relates to one of the more significant issues, a lot of people on the conservative side like to talk about what is known as the Great Reset, which is this idea that basically the bailout money was done specifically to get the multinational corporations all of the loot and screw over all of the small businesses throughout the country. And so what you're seeing now are these massive, scoops from organizations like BlackRock that are buying homes ad nauseum, if you will, all over the country. And so this particular article, which is from Vox, not a surprise. Wall Street isn't to blame for the chaotic housing market. That's funny. Who would have thought that Wall Street would not have anything to do with why people can't afford to buy a house anymore? There is this idea, this notion that we're becoming a serfs class. It's not a notion, it's reality. Most people can't afford to buy a house that are in the, millennial and Gen Z generation. That's a serious problem. And when you have corporate media that are willing to put out articles suggesting that the actual problem isn't the actual problem, What do you call that? How is that not propaganda of the worst kind? We know who the perpetrators are, and yet they're putting out articles saying, no, it's not actually them.
Well, what would you expect when the same company that owns those interests owns the media? It's just all the same thing.
Yeah, and again, I feel terribly for a lot of people who just don't know any better. I don't think that they're ill-intended, but
well,
I also
we're going to get into this a lot more in detail when Jordan's on, because the housing crisis, as soon as the eviction moratorium is let up, is going to reach astronomical sizes.
Oh, when it's going to happen.
Talking about 30. We're talking like upwards of 30 million homeless.
Yeah, it's going to happen. It's just a question of when it happens.
Yeah.
Now, do I think that they have it in them to basically try to delay it until the midterms? They're going to try, but I don't think it'll last that long because there's too much money being lost, and they don't want that. That's why they're buying up all these homes, because I think what they're going to do is they're going to basically just turn everything into rental properties, and that's all anybody's going to be able to afford and be able to get. So they're going to have no equity. They're not going to be able to build any type of wealth.
It's just another tool to keep a permanent underclass. That's all.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely agree with that. And again, the problem just gets worse every day. And it's not going to get better before enough people are willing to put on that yellow vest, as you like to say. You know, until there comes a point where people just are not going to take it anymore. Who the heck knows, you know, how much people are going to be willing to take. But I think when they start mass kicking, you know, like a massive kicking people out of their homes, then it's really going to get bad. Like it's going to get very bad.
People are already having issues in different cities where they're out protesting that there's homeless encampments at their neighborhoods because they don't want to be walking their kids to school and having to step over human waste. So eventually, when you're getting upwards 20 million or so homeless people, that's going to start to impact more and more people that aren't homeless. So it's going to be really interesting to me how this is going to go down, because usually people don't care about things until it affects them. So we'll see. But there are a lot of people protesting right now against their municipalities for not handling the homeless situation better. And, you know, I don't know exactly what what their suggestions are, but
I gotta say though, how is Jimmy Dore and swearing his violence on the live stream at the same time? I thought they were the same person.
I think they're the same person. I don't know.
I don't think they are able to do that. But guys, smash the like button, share. We need everybody watching on YouTube. We got a lot of important things to cover tonight.
Let's talk about. Do you see the pictures on the other articles?
I see the bombs being dropped. Do
you see the picture on the person?
Oh, Two-Face.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he is he is Two-Face.
Well,
but I don't even think. But Joe doesn't even know, you know, what he doesn't even recognize his own face. Like Joe is so out of sight, out of mind.
I know.
I mean,
but
again,
the reality is he's been playing this duality with foreign policy since the minute he got in there, and whether or not it's him or whoever his little handlers are, or whoever is actually in charge at the military-industrial complex. But they're creating this situation where they're trying to give a little in one place, but it just looks absolutely ridiculous when put up against what's going on. So they're wanting to have peace talks in Afghanistan and have troop withdrawal, but at the same time, he's airstriking in Iraq-Syria border. So, like, I don't understand.
What is
the goal here?
What's even more interesting is that he drops these bombs the day Mike Gravel passes away. I mean, it's just so, but in a way, it's so honest about where we stand when it comes to war policy, and that there can never be enough.
Yeah.
But I like in a lot of ways, you know, I don't harp on it too much, but I fully believe that, you know, our president has some form of onset dementia.
Oh, I do too. And they don't want to talk about that, and they don't want to, and it doesn't matter.
But here's the big problem. You know, when I think of Reagan, for example, Reagan is one of the most polarizing presidents we've ever had, because he had one of the most successful first terms any president has ever had, and he had one of the worst second terms any president ever had. Dukakis was heading for a landslide victory against Bush until he completely messed up on the debate stage. It's amazing how if you have a really bad debate performance, that can absolutely sink your campaign.
I'm telling you, no, it was the friggin' helmet in the tank.
Yeah.
It was that helmet on his head, and it was just so bad. The reason I'm
referencing Reagan in comparison to Biden.
It's because they're both out to lunch.
If you look at the way Reagan debated Carter in 1980 versus the way he debated Mondale in 1984, you're looking at two completely different people. Now that you have a president, again, who isn't really in charge, who isn't really making decisions, it allows for people behind the scenes to do these nefarious things.
I think that it would happen regardless. I believe that the trajectory is the trajectory regardless of who's sitting in the Oval Office when you're dealing with people that are part of the corporate establishment. It doesn't matter who it is.
No, I don't agree with that because I think there are times where presidents will stand up to some degree. I mean,
when have you seen that last?
Well, I think there were instances where Trump really didn't want to be in any type of a bombing.
But he didn't do anything about it, and we're still on the same trajectory, and the things are still happening. The wheels are still churning. So, I don't think it matters who's sitting there. They're all beholden to the military-industrial complex. And this stuff, the only difference is which stories get bigger placement in the news. I think that's the variable, depending on what they're trying to make it look like.
It's, in a way, it's no different than what took place with the New York Times or the Washington Post, where they said, now that Trump is out of the White House, we're not covering, the president every day anymore. I mean, how could you be so transparently corrupt, so brazenly? And you're not supposed to have a bias. That's not supposed to exist. The smaller papers, maybe, but even then it's not good because it's freedom of the press. You're really supposed to be giving an objective perspective, not a biased perspective.
But they stopped. That was so long ago. Like, they're not even actual journalists anymore at all. They don't do any investigative reporting. So what is it they're going to find out?
Not, but, again, this is the reason why I harp on this idea that while I do think that there are a lot of things to be left to be desired when it comes to, the squad and different, factions that are building, if you will, of the non-corporate left or just non-corporate in general. It doesn't even have to be the left. They make up 5% of Capitol Hill. How many people out there are on the corporate dollar? Our congressional representative, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, may be one of the worst, but there are a hell of a lot more on Capitol Hill that are like her.
We're gonna get into that. If you want to, I don't know when you want to do story time, and I don't know if you looked at the graphics for it that I did.
We've got a few minutes to hop into story time. Why don't we go there? Let's go to story time.
Okay. Do you want me?
Again, here's the thing. Are you handling it? Or you got it, right?
Well, here, I'll show you.
Yeah. Whores of Washington.
Today's story is from the book Horrors of Washington. Well, I was thinking, I was having this Horrors of Babylon kind of, Caligula idea in my head as to what this would be. And so if you want, though, you could do the honors of reading the story. I'll put it up and you could read the story.
I'm the one with the voice for radio, so I might as well do that.
Okay. So hold on a second. I'm going to put up.
This should be entertaining.
This is going to be really good, guys. So, all right. You ready?
I am ready. Once upon a time, there was a Congress that was supposed to serve the people of the land. But because they were greedy whores, they instead served at the pleasure of corporations and oligarchs, who in turn screwed the people by stealing their resources and poisoning their land. The whores left all the way to their banks. The end. So as it turns out...
That was so funny. It was really good. I got to say it was good.
So as it turns out, we have yet another, it was Greenpeace, ironically, that broke this story. They were able to catch one of the top ExxonMobil lobbyists on a hot mic basically admitting that, yeah, our interest in supporting the carbon tax is just a ploy. It's not real.
Right.
We don't
and there were 11 people that they said were like really key to their success. Like 11 people. Now, these were in all fairness, I did choose the Democrats to specifically put up here, but there were also Republicans, but it was kind of was both. It was equal both ways. But I would like to point out that 2 of these whores are up for re-election right now. So I believe Mark Kelly and whoever the woman is that's not Kirsten Sinema.
She's from New Hampshire, I believe. I'm slipping on her name.
And Mark Kelly in Arizona. Those 2 are up for re-election coming up next year. So, I thought that was kind of interesting. And then this guy, the other bald guy down there, he's
Coons.
like
Coons is the in terms of the absolute, again, we talk about
he's like Mr. Hide Your Money in Delaware is like his
Delaware is a note. Well, if you remember back in 2016, the Clinton Foundation and the Trump Organization, like that's where they hide their money. They all hide it in Delaware. Delaware is the conduit to the Cayman Islands. It's basically the same thing.
And if you don't think that there was a connection between like these people and Joe based on Delaware, like he's so over his head in the filth with the people regarding Delaware. And it's so interesting to me that nobody
one of the sickest things about Chris Coons, which is hard to believe. And we've talked about this, and Marty is right. Not only is he Biden's best friend, but if you have ever seen the video of Biden getting a little too inappropriate with children,
you're going to have to be more specific.
One of the kids happens to be Chris Coons' daughter.
Gross.
And so to say that this is a big club and you ain't in it is an understatement. And there's really just this, there's the code of silence. There's all of this stuff that they are, essentially able to get away with without consequence. And maybe the people that have been there for a long time are not going to pay a price. But what's key is that we set a precedent going forward so that we don't have to be in these situations anymore.
See, I believe that while you might not see visibly what price somebody is paying, I believe that everybody pays somewhere, somehow. It's karma. It's a bitch. And it's not necessarily something that happens to them in a political arena. Somebody who's a complete douche in one arena of their life might have it looking good there, but something horrible will happen to them somewhere else. Douchies beget douchebaggery. That's what I think.
I just think that again, it just gets back, and this is something we'll speak about with Julie and Mike, is this idea that if you really think you can change anything by taking corporate special interest money, you can't change it. It will never happen because then you become dependent. And no more obvious is that a case right now than with what is happening with Nina Turner's race in Ohio. Nina is completely funded by grassroots money. Her opponent is ready, willing, and able to take all of the dirty money she can get her hands on in order to win, because her objective is not to serve her constituents as well as she possibly can. Her objective is to advance her career, which is what a lot of people end up doing. You get close, you don't win, you figure out a way to become more effective in other ways, or you decide, I have to win by any means necessary, so this is what I'm prepared to do. So when the signal goes out that somebody like Jim Clyburn is going to endorse a candidate, that isn't just being done because they truly support that other candidate.
You're jumping ahead again. You're like
we'll get to it at the end. I know. But what I'm saying is that's done for a reason. It's done to signal to corporate special interests that, hey, support this person. This person's definitely going to do business. Open for business. That's the new phrase. That's the phrase I'm using from now on. Like our Congresswoman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, open for business.
For sure.
Our governor, Ron DeSantis, open for business.
All right. But the difference with him, though, seriously, is he's not hateable like she is. Like he's very personable to some extent, and he's doing things that please different groups of people. Half the stuff he's done I do like, and the other stuff he's done I don't like. So he's appealing to a wide variety of people.
The problem becomes if you look at, like, for example, what just happened in in Key West with the cruise line. And the fact that the people who live there don't want this, but because the guy who owns the docks decided, oh, I'll give him $1 million. And of course, why does he give him $1 million? He gives him $1 million for one simple reason, because he knows it's an investment that's going to pay off.
Yeah.
So he gives him $1 million. DeSantis grants him the rights to keep the permit, and the residents are pissed off, but it doesn't matter because he's open for business and he'll make millions upon millions of dollars on top of that
and he doesn't care about Key West anyway.
But that's the point. The point is, we are never going to change this. The system will never change until we come to a realization that above everything else that matters in politics is whether or not you are taking corporate special interest money. At the ground level, in this case, in Texas, you are not going to turn that state until you're willing to support candidates who are not going to take that corporate special interest money. When that happens, then the change is going to happen, and it's going to happen fast because people are yearning for something different. Yeah. And I still believe that the more we move to a non-corporate Democratic Party, non-corporate movement in general, the GOP is going to have no choice but to move.
And I think that Texas is a good comparison for us because we have a lot of similarities with Texas and Florida. And also, I've lived in both places.
You now have the opportunity to share with Julie and Mike about your experiences living in the Lone Star State.
I lived there for 6 years. So for anyone who's interested, I lived in San Antonio for 6 years. My first son was born there. And that's where I went to law school. And so I do like Texas. I have a lot of friends in Texas. I have judge friends and legislator friends and all sorts of cool friends in Texas. So I really like it there. Yeah. Are you ready to go?
Let's rock and roll. So without further ado, a lot of you know that Nevada has completely changed their dynamic in terms of how the state party operates. It is now a non-corporate progressive state party.
Yeah.
And the Lone Star State is attempting to go in that direction as well. And who better to try to make that happen than two of the more progressive candidates who just ran for Congress in the Lone Star State, Julie Oliver and Mike Siegel, two of the slate mates of Brand New Congress with Jen. Welcome to Generational Change.
Hey, y'all. Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. I never got to meet you guys. I think you guys both joined the BNC slate after the summit. And so I never got to meet you. So I'm glad I get to meet you. And I'm really excited that there are people working like you guys and what you're working for in Texas, because I actually really do like Texas. And I think people have this vision of what people are like in Texas. And I think that they're very mistaken. I think that what most people envision is what we know of is maybe like East Texas or maybe up somewhere like where the tumbleweeds are. But there's a lot of left-leaning people in Texas. So I don't know which one of you, whoever wants to sort of say how this came about, like how you guys decided to do this, and we could just go from there.
I would say that Mike and I both probably have differing genesis stories of how we got here, but we maintained contact over these last 4 years and even after the election, and decided that, we really do need to do year-round organizing. That is one of the things that Democrats are guilty of not doing, is year-round organizing. And I shared a Civis post-mortem report. Civis is a national data analytics firm. I shared that with Mike. It had some really startling information on issues that outperform Democrats everywhere: Medicaid expansion, minimum wage increase, and marijuana decrim. And Mike had this brilliant idea. It's like, what if we do this on a ballot initiative level, city by city in Texas, because we are prohibited from doing so on a statewide level. Mike, how would you change the genesis story?
Well, yeah, I mean, we both ran for Congress twice, ran these kind of, strong progressive campaigns. We built a lot of support, kind of gave people hope, and ultimately hit a little bit of a wall at the end because of COVID taking our field programs offline and the Trump wave being a very impressive force here in Texas. But yeah, we want to do year-round work. We have criticisms of the party, and especially the DCCC and the DNC and how they intervene in politics. And we just want to add to the constellation of organizations that are already working in Texas. I mean, one question Julie and I get sometimes is, well, are y'all going to be the next Stacey Abrams of Texas? And we hate that question. No. We have no such pretensions. I mean, first of all, there's a lot of amazing folks doing great work here. Organizations like Texas Organizing Project, Move Texas, Workers Defense Project, that are doing amazing work, especially in the big cities. And also Texas is so big. I mean, it kind of goes to your question about people's perceptions of Texas. This is a country in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
Beto O'Rourke, when he ran for Senate, kept saying, I've been to all 254 counties. And I mean, we have 254 counties. It takes, 10 hours to drive from Austin to El Paso. And, there's another rest of the state to the east. And so it's a huge state. And what Julie and I feel like where we can fit into the folks who are already doing good work is basically like a progressive messaging strategy, city by city. And it's like these issues that Julie mentioned that outperformed Joe Biden in 2020. I mean, these are all Republican states. Florida, expanding the minimum wage. Nebraska, cracking down on payday lending. Missouri, expanding Medicaid. South Dakota, legalizing weed. These are all Trump states. And yet they're passing statewide progressive issues. And what we want people to do is start to associate Democrats with the issues they like. And unfortunately, in Texas, the Democratic brand is weak. And so what we think we can do is build these city-based campaigns to decriminalize marijuana, to raise the minimum wage, at least for city and contractor jobs, to a living wage. Bit by bit, if we can build a coalition here and get 10,000 extra votes out, a coalition there, build 15,000 new voters, like that adds up. And that could be the long-term strategy for changing Texas.
I think that it's amazing. Oh, I'm sorry, Peter. I was just going to say, we very much have been employing this same concept of you don't end when the campaign season is over. And that's the biggest problem. You end up losing your momentum. And so the biggest thing we can do, and this is why I always talk about like a campaign in and of itself, win or lose, it can be part of the progression of the narrative. And if you use that to steamroll into the next campaign and the next campaign, it's chipping away at it. And it's so important to be doing it. And we definitely agree that doing it at local level will yield the best results. And it makes it harder for the establishment to blacklist you when you're working at the local level.
Agreed.
We're speaking with Julie Oliver and Mike Siegel of the new organization Ground Game Texas. In Florida, we have, I think we have 5 states. I would call it 5. I would say we have the Panhandle, we have the Jacksonville area, we have Central Florida, and then we have Southwest and Southeast. How would you describe Texas in terms of its?
It's kind of similar. It's kind of similar.
How you would break it up. I mean, obviously you have your own Panhandle. I know South Texas is one. Central Texas is definitely its own region. But how would you guys describe it?
Yeah, you got the Gulf Coast, which is its own region. You got East Texas. You got West Texas. Is El Paso a part of West Texas, or is El Paso its own little thing? I mean, some people say South Texas and the Rio Grande Valley are actually 2 different things.
Yeah.
North Texas. Yeah.
And we have a Panhandle as well.
Yeah. I've actually been to Lubbock. I have to say that there's really nothing there. There's not a whole lot of there. No offense to people from Lubbock. Shout out to my law classmate, Doug Nagley. Great guy, nice wedding, the whole thing. But God, there's really nothing in Lubbock. And where I lived was San Antonio, which is a completely different vibe than a lot of other places. Certainly different than Austin or Houston or the Metroplex. And I think that there is a lot of progressive stuff there, more than we have in Florida. Which is interesting. So where are you guys starting your camp? Like, where have you already sort of rooted or planted roots? Like where are you starting and spreading?
So we actually are starting in Austin, of all places. And we didn't expect to have to do this on our own home turf. Austin is a fairly, they call Austin the blueberry and the tomato soup, right? But we're starting in Austin for a couple of reasons. One, in off-year elections, again, Democrats tend to go to sleep, and we want to wake them up. We need to give them something to work for this year, because guess what? Republicans don't give up. They are working year-round. And we need to turn people out in off-year elections. And we think that we can do that through this ballot initiative. We think we can keep people engaged and volunteering, doing this work. And we need to do that so we don't lose that momentum. And the other reason, quite honestly, is we think that, Travis County GOP has something up their sleeve. They did an anti-homelessness proposition in May. No candidates were elected. It was just an anti-homelessness proposition. They got a very right-wing city council member elected last December in a runoff election. And you don't pour millions of dollars into ballot initiatives if you don't have something coming up the next year. And so we think that this is something that is incredibly popular. 87% of Texans believe that marijuana should be decriminalized in some form or fashion. And this is absolutely a way to get young people to turn out. Study after study and election after election where marijuana has been on the ballot shows a positive increase in youth turnout. And ultimately, we do want young people turning out to vote. We want them to feel engaged, and we want them to take power of their local elections.
So is this initiative something that, where has Texas been with the marijuana process? I mean, like right now we have medicinal in Florida. We're still trying to get recreational. Even our medicinal is so like hamstrung by regulations that it's made it almost like a little corporate oligarchy at the top, which it has its whole own set of problems. So where is Texas now in terms of the legislation for marijuana?
I mean, very limited progress. I mean, there's a tiny CBD program and there's a even tinier medicinal marijuana program. And it's like each of those things is only available to people with like one symptom of one syndrome. You know, it's like,
right.
You know, like severe seizures. I think you can get CBD. I forgot what marijuana was. The marijuana program is so tiny as to be non-existent. And it's really, you know, what we think it is, it's a wedge issue that works in our favor.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you know, some people have asked us, like, why do you want to focus on marijuana? You know, there's voting rights, there's housing, there's so many more important issues.
Not to motivate the kids.
Well, I mean, yeah. So first, yes, you're right. These issues are more important. Tax reform is frankly more important, you know, but the Republicans don't talk about their most important issue. I mean, their most important issue is protecting their wealth and privilege and power, right? But yet they're talking about AR-15s and forcing women to maintain a pregnancy. You know, Karl Rove is considered to be a genius because in 2004, he put gay marriage bans on many state ballots and helped elect GW. Right? They weaponize these wedge issues. Why can't we?
Oh, I think it's great. But so who are you working with your initiative and like in terms of the language of it? Because we last year had 2 different marijuana ballot initiatives that were being passed around. One was good and one was bad. But most people don't know the difference. So they just hear legalized marijuana. Sure, I'll sign it. Well, one of ours didn't allow for home grow. And if you don't allow for home grow, then that opens up this whole problem that we're going to have here. So that's how it's important to get the legislation right on that. And most people don't know the difference.
Yeah, so we are even baby steps from there. We're basically telling the City of Austin Police Department that they should not arrest or give tickets for low-level marijuana offenses, Class A and Class B misdemeanors. And then there's this wrinkle that the Republicans actually created an opportunity for us in 2019. The Texas legislature legalized industrial scale hemp production. And that, you know, these Republicans, they were taking money from the hemp lobby and they thought they were so smart. And after that bill passed, district attorneys and police forces realized, oh no, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on the show, but like, you know, oh shit. How do we now prove up a marijuana case? Because the smell of the substance, well, who's to say low THC hemp smells different than high THC marijuana? Or the burning substance, like, does it smell different? Does it look different? And what the DA's
Why don't you ask those questions? I could actually open up my door and get a lot of those answers. I'm currently in a camper on a cannabis farm,
But you know, long story short, they realized that to prove up a case, they had to pay for chemical testing, basically THC testing, and it cost money. And so what some DAs started doing was saying, we're not going to prosecute these cases. It's not worth it. We have bigger priorities. And so what this ordinance would do is, in addition to telling the police don't go after low-level marijuana possession, is we're not going to pay for testing.
Right.
And basically, there's been a test program in Austin where they basically went from thousands of tickets a year to zero, hundreds of arrests a year to zero. And this measure would formalize that and make it permanent in Austin. And what we're hoping to do is to have other cities take notice, because we're doing this in an off year. But what if we could have this in next year, especially in the general election ballot? What if, like, you know, let's just say that guy Beto runs for governor, but then you've got weed on all these city ballots, and that helps create more excitement for the.
Oh, it'll get out the vote. It absolutely gets out the vote, and I think that that's a great idea. It's actually strange to me that I would have thought that Austin would have been a city that would have decriminalized by now, because like we even Fort Lauderdale has, and the best way to do it, if you get to a state attorney that is not going to prosecute them, then the police will stop arresting them because it won't go anywhere. So
Right.
it's really not something that the police will, it's not going to be, it's not their discretion that's the issue. If they know that that's not going to be prosecuted by the state attorney, they're going to stop arresting the people.
And in Austin, they actually, by resolution, effectively ended enforcement of low-level marijuana possession cases. However, it took APD almost a year to implement it, and I think it was electing a very progressive DA who wasn't going to prosecute those cases. That's probably what turned the tide. So what we want to do is codify this. It's never been codified in Austin. In the off chance that we get a new police chief or a DA down the road that may want to, go back to the old days of enforcing this. And so they're baby steps, but I do think that if we can kind of knit together a city by city framework of decriminalizing or ending enforcement, because that's what we have to do in Texas to kind of push us there, then I think that realistically we can perhaps have a state legislative session where they very seriously consider lifting the ban on cannabis. So that's our hope.
That is how it happened in other places. I mean, that is ultimately how it happened in Colorado, because I remember there was a period of time before they legalized recreational, and I was there and I was in Breckenridge, and in Breckenridge they had decided that they are just not prosecuting the cases anymore. They're just not doing it. They don't care. They're not prosecuting it. And so, I was like sort of like a nice refuge for potheads to hang out in Breckenridge. And that was cool. But eventually it did start to grow. Like eventually that did start to take hold. And for the most part, state attorneys, they don't want to be bothered with this. It is so like, other than its revenue, because that's the thing about it is it's revenue. Like somebody just said I don't know if it's El Paso here, this one. And so it's basically like traffic tickets. It's just another source of revenue stream, which, I guess it's better than criminalization, but it's still kind of annoying.
Oh, it would be a better revenue stream. Yeah. Sorry, Mike. A better revenue stream would be to decriminalize it and tax it.
Yes, absolutely.
Legalize it. Yeah.
We're speaking with Julie Oliver and Mike Siegel of Ground Game Texas. One of the major problems we have in Florida, we got plenty. Gerrymandering is a very serious issue. I have seen Dan Crenshaw's district. His is probably the best example of what gerrymandering.
Somebody was just talking about it in the chat.
Yeah, what gerrymandering at its very worst actually looks like. I'm curious as to what type of a movement as far as trying to unwind some of the gerrymandering issues that exist in the state. You guys, obviously, for anybody who is not aware, I will say that the Texas Democratic Party actually has cojones. Not many states actually do. And what they did very recently to prevent, I guess, was it like a voter restriction law that they were basically trying to push through? And the Texas Democrats were just like, yeah, we're not having this shit. We're definitely going to, stand on principle, if nothing else. You never see like something like that in Florida. So I'm curious as part of your organization, if gerrymandering is an issue that you guys are focusing on as an overall party in terms of how you properly deal with something like that.
Yeah, I'll say a little about it. I mean, we give our state house reps a lot of credit. It hasn't been very frequent that like you're really proud of the state house delegation. I mean, I love these people, but they've been in the minorities for so long that it's a very disempowering experience. But they basically went on strike. They took the action that they could take. And they stopped this like 12 or 20 part horrible vote suppression bill that was going to do everything from make it harder for disabled people to vote to, shortening voting hours. I mean, just all these tremendous, terrible measures. And so big picture, we need a movement to fight voter suppression and gerrymandering. The problem is that right now the Republicans control all the levers. I mean, other than the courts. And so if they overstep a little bit, you can sue them. But really what Julie and I are trying to embrace is a long-term strategy for political change, because it's not looking real good right now. But one of the things we can do is as soon as they issue the maps, we can create a strategy to find which Republicans were left vulnerable, and what cities do those folks represent, and what city campaigns can we develop that will motivate turnout to get rid of those folks. Because part of the conversation, and I'll pass it to you, Julie, is like what happened in Georgia, for example, or in Arizona, where they flipped the state, right? Those were 10, 15-year processes. I mean, In Texas, I'm not sure people have been really investing here, except like maybe right after Trump got elected, like since 16, 17. But we're definitely not at year 10 of like the deep investment in infrastructure. And so we're trying to have like a little bit of a longer horizon, not chase the sugar high of winning the next election, but like doing the right things that if we keep doing them over time, that will really set in motion kind of generational change.
Well,
perfect segue into generational change. Sorry.
I was gonna add one little thing to Mike, and Mike knows this really well. One of the things that we've also analyzed is that gerrymandered Democratic congressional districts did not do their jobs of turning out voters in the November 2020 election. And so we analyzed all 36 congressional races in Texas, and it was a very disappointing realization that the 11 safe Democratic congressional districts were the worst in turnout in Texas. So they were the bottom third. And so, it hurts us both ways, having, gerrymandered Republican districts in which Mike and I both ran and put thousands of miles on our respective family cars, tens of thousands of miles on our respective family cars. But it also cuts the other way, that once a Democrat makes it through the primary, they don't do the work for November. And so we really do need to figure out ways that we can leverage this tool to inspire people to vote for good candidates, regardless of whether they're challenging a Republican or challenging an incumbent Democrat.
Speaking with Julie Oliver and Mike Siegel of Ground Game Texas, former slate mates with Jen Perlman on Brand New Congress. I'm curious, a lot of times we debate constantly about what is ultimately going to pique the interest of the voter. I don't particularly find that especially the independent voter, I would say specifically, really cares very much about the party politics stuff. They really care about issues. And I'm curious if there are specific issues that you find that voters really do respond well to. Could be, as you were talking about, cannabis decriminalization at a minimum, but things like Medicare for all, things like ending the drug war altogether,
living wage.
What are the types of issues that Texans are responding to, regardless of party affiliation?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And again, if you look at the data shows that people do care about these issues deeply. They do care about, and I ran primarily on Medicare for all because my background is in healthcare finance, and it was something that I could easily kind of explain from my vantage point. And I could get Republicans to say, wow, that's a really good idea. Why don't we have this? Like, yeah. Why don't we? But I think, going back to just even what the 2020 elections look like, healthcare was obviously an important issue. But Mike and I, as DCCC approved candidates, were told to campaign on affordable healthcare. Well, that doesn't mean anything. That's a nothing. That's a nothingism. It's a nothing burger. I'm sorry, that's a giant nothing burger. Talk about protections for pre-existing conditions. Well, if you're 65 and older and on Medicare, that's non-existent. Medicare covers it. And if you're one of the 31 million people who are uninsured and an additional, 10, 20 million who are underinsured, protecting pre-existing conditions doesn't mean anything. Let's be substantive. Mike and I stand for, and we think the Democratic Party should stand for, 3 things. It's easy: workers, wages, and weed. And another framing is, climate, care, jobs, and justice. But it's very, very simple.
Yeah, I think another issue in Texas that is something that could be tricky is immigration. And it's one of those things. I actually clerked in the Western District of Texas, and the magistrate judge that I clerked for, mostly what we heard were cases from the border. That was like a huge thing, and what's going on at the border. And it is one of the things that the Republicans use to really instill fear, dredge that up, get everybody out and anti-immigrant. And I think Texas is someplace where that is definitely visible, especially given this whole that now Biden is continuing to build the wall. And so, yeah. And it's like, I look at Texas and I think, okay, last time you guys had a power crisis and couldn't have power for however many days, but yet we have the money to put up a giant wall between us and Mexico. So how do you find the immigration issue lands with people down there? And do you find that that's something that is, it's kind of incendiary, and it's in San Antonio is also very different than a lot of the other places. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, a lot of Democrats in Texas are scared of the immigration issue, right? To just say like, Julian Castro, when he was running for president, talked about getting away with the law that basically criminalizes border crossings and return it to be a civil issue. And I supported that as a candidate. Some people told me not to, be more moderate. And there's this fear that like if we get associated with folks crossing the border, that it's going to weaken our brand. But what I think is that, and Julie shares this as well, we need to stand in solidarity on racial justice and immigrant justice issues. So we need to stand with the Black community and demand that Black Lives Matter, march in the George Floyd protests on down the line, demand comprehensive, criminal justice reform. And we need to stand with our immigrant community and cannot allow 1 inch of these folks to be demonized for seeking a better life here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we also need to pivot to economic justice. And you might have heard of this idea, the race class narrative, that some folks are framing, and I think Julie can describe it better than I can. But one way I think about it is it shouldn't be right versus left. It should be bottom versus top, right?
Yeah.
And this idea that in Texas, there is a strong history of populism. I mean, going back 100 years before, like if you read this is one of the famous books in Texas, the biography of LBJ, it's like 4 or 5 volumes. And you ask anyone if they've read it, they're like, I've read some of book 1. But like LBJ's dad was a populist, like from that old like agrarian populist movement. And that strand is still there. And I think you're talking about the power grid issue is so perfect, because to me, that should be the response to anything Greg Abbott wants to do. Like, you're taking emergency relief money for this border wall stunt, and you can't fix the damn grid. I mean, that is an issue that unites people, that broadens the base. Instead of like these very narrowly, carefully calibrated, poll-tested issues, let's talk about power. I mean, because that's the most basic function of the government, right? To make sure we're safe and healthy. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. And I don't know if you want to add to that, Julie.
Yeah, I would just say that, no matter our backgrounds or the color of our skin, we all want to be able to turn on the lights and have heat in the winter.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys can see this, but this might be a good idea for your organization to do stickers that say workers, wages, and weed. We actually, on our campaign, had support legalize marijuana from our campaign, and we gave it out to all the college kids, all the high school kids, and they had like support legalize marijuana. But I really think workers, wages, and weed could be that's kind of a cool thing. Coming soon. That's actually the design is coming next week. Actually, there you go. That's a good one, and you'll be able to sell that merch too.
Speaking with Julie Oliver and Mike Siegel of Ground Game Texas, personalities unfortunately dominate where a lot of people end up going. Governor Abbott is kind of a very, he's a very bland politician. He doesn't, obviously he's going to get the R voters. It's really a question of whether he gets enough independents versus a potential Democrat.
Sidebar, I didn't vote for him as Attorney General either, because I thought he was a piece of crap then. So onward, sorry.
But he is not a lightning rod the way that Ted Cruz is. And I am curious as to, how you guys see that unfolding, because I think Abbott's handling of this energy crisis, and this isn't, the reason why I do think Abbott could potentially be vulnerable is because this isn't a one-off, incident. This is something that has been stemming for quite some time. He has handled this horrifically bad. And of course, the reason he's handling it horrifically bad is because he is deep in the back pocket of the fossil fuel industry. So with that said, how important is Ground Game Texas to being able to, whether it is Beto or somebody else, having a formidable shot at actually having a governor who, even if Austin is not a blue state house, it's at least a state house that will have a governor that can block really horrific bills, much like we have to deal with here with the Florida GOP.
Yeah. And I want to remind people, in Texas, we have the line item veto. So the governor gets to go line by line and veto legislation he or she doesn't like. And in Texas, I do think that what we are doing with Ground Game Texas is incredibly pivotal, because if you think about increasing turnout, I'm going to give you an example, 2 examples, actually. One is Killeen, Texas, a very diverse community that sits right outside of Fort Hood. Fort Hood is the largest military installation in the United States. Very diverse community, full of veterans, but their turnout for the 2020 November election was 49%. 49%. We didn't even make it up to 50%. And that is a city that, if we actually increase turnout by 5%, we flip a state house substantially. It's not going to be a close race. It's going to be a landslide. If we increase turnout by 10%, you've flipped a congressional. If congressional District 31 looks similar to the way it looked this year, or similar to how it looked in 2020. This is such a pivotal community, and all it takes is driving turnout and decriminalize marijuana and allowing veterans to have options when it comes to, chronic pain management is incredibly important to them. They've been lobbying the state legislature for this for years, and the state legislature has ignored them. So I do think that this is something that we can bring to Killeen, increase turnout, and actually add 20,000 votes to just one city. Now imagine doing that across a dozen cities. And you have the work again of other organizations doing really amazing work in big cities. Mike and I are focused on the mid-sized cities. This is how you start flipping seats. We still have a long-term view of things. I don't want to come in and say, we're going to flip everything in 2022. I think that's unrealistic to couch it in those terms. But I think it is very likely that we can make some very strong impacts in some local races, some congressional races, and perhaps the statewide race that matters the most. And I do think that's going to be the governor race.
Yeah, people forget, but Texas was a state that had Ann Richards as a governor, and I met her, and she was badass and just really cool. But the point is that there are those niches of people there. It is not and it's not that different from Florida, Peter. It really isn't. It's very similar, and it's also it's the kind of state that is really very county or like isolated. Like it's not as centralized. It's not like that. It's much more diverse.
Yeah, we have that. One of the biggest environmental issues in Florida is obviously we're a peninsula, so we're very low. You want to talk about. We don't have to get too deep into the weeds with what happened in Surfside, but that's just one of many circumstances because of sea level rise and the issue with climate change that is now starting to get to the surface, and the average dupe, if you will, is starting to see it because most people don't care unless they can feel it, they can see it, and they can touch it. So now it's becoming a really, really serious problem. Now, Texas is a very interesting state because I believe you're one of the leaders, if not the leader, in wind energy, which is amazing. But you're still, way up there when it comes to obviously fossil fuels, specifically fracking. I'm curious as to what the environmental movement looks like in Texas, how serious that is, and if that's also something that's being incorporated into Ground Game Texas.
Right. Well, I'll jump in on this. I mean, Julie was running on Medicare for All, and I was running on the Green New Deal. I mean, we both supported both issues, but the district I ran in for Congress, it was like there's a coal plant, this 40-year-old coal plant that's killing 12 surrounding counties, and the district I ran in touched Houston, and obviously epicenter of the international petroleum industry. And there is a strong environmental movement in Texas. I mean, there's Sierra Club, there's 350. There's a lot of like Sunrise chapters that I've been really engaged with. There are these other organizations that have been active, but obviously they're not in power. And labor, I think, is the key to this. I mean, we don't have a very strong labor movement in Texas because of right to work.
Same.
But we do have a strong, it's not as strong as it could be, but we have a powerful set of labor organizations, the Texas AFL-CIO. Now, half of those labor organizations on average statewide are a fossil fuel, building trades unions and fossil fuel related industries. And so that's the key. And that's one of the my pet projects, or like my passion projects, I should say, is like, how can we get labor on board with the idea of a just transition, the idea that we're going to create the jobs, because we know folks are going to lose jobs if we close the coal plants, close the gas plants, and so forth. But the federal government should be guaranteeing these folks, their future employment, their future income, to make sure that workers are not suffering for these macroeconomic changes and energy changes that we need. And to me, I would love to do that. I think we do have opportunities. Right now, Julie and I are working in different cities that are exploring this ARPA money, the federal relief money that's come down. Could that be used to fund a just transition? Like I'm talking to these, and I call them kids, the Sunrise activists. They're not all, teenagers, but
I call them kids too. They are kids.
That is the best national organization that I've seen in the country.
I love these folks so much. I mean, they are strategic, they're hardworking, they're smart, they're dedicated.
And they get their candidates across the finish line. They probably made the difference for Cory Bush at the 11 o'clock hour.
Oh, exactly.
There's no question that what they are doing is absolutely incredible. And Mike, you really hit it on the head. I would definitely, we have universally agreed that probably the biggest roadblock that Jen had to face against Wasserman Schultz was the head of the Broward County AFL-CIO. His name is Dan Reynolds. He's been at it probably as long as she's been at it, which is 30 years, which is, again, a lifetime in many ways. I do think that a non-corporate, even to some degree, nonpartisan labor movement is the future. Yeah. That is where you're going to get the most amount of people who are going to say, I do agree with the universal health care, because unions have to negotiate health care to begin with, and that would save them a lot of money, increase salary. And of course, people believe in a living wage. And then as it relates to the Green New Deal, it's a jobs program. It's a clean energy jobs program. And if there's a state that loves to brag about how they are the #1 state for jobs in America, it is the Lone Star State. They absolutely want to be #1 in that category by any means necessary, which is why I think a lot of the communities, like I've read some very conservative communities. I don't remember where, maybe you guys could remind me of the name, but there's a very conservative community in Central Texas that basically runs its entire community on renewable energy.
Georgetown.
Yeah.
There you go. What a perfect name too,
Well, okay, so I want to remind people too, and I've put my little handy dandy like notepad that I take important notes on and I don't throw away. This really is a workers' justice issue. If you look at the CEO compensation of the oil and gas, just CEO, we're not talking CFO, we're not talking about vice presidents, just the CEO. A daily compensation for the CEO of ExxonMobil, who made the news recently, $64,000 every day. Just the CEO, $64,000 every day of the year, 365 days. That means he makes $64,000 on Monday, and he makes $64,000 on Tuesday, and he makes my God, if you talk about Kinder Morgan is really big in Texas because they're just plowing through, people's ranch lands, through communities to, because they, straight line connects 2 points. And they don't want to go around like, rivers or anything, historic landmarks, anything. They want to do a straight line. So they're just plowing through tons of property in Texas. Mr. Kinder made over $1 billion in stock gains. And he was a former Enron employee. ConocoPhillips, $82,000 a day, CEO. There's not, any worker that makes even a fraction of that salary or compensation. It's ridiculous. And
how
so
do these people not have guillotines being built in front of their houses on a regular basis? I really don't understand it. I think it's like it's not even a secret where people live. I don't understand how people come and go in peace on a regular basis, because they're not going to be able to build moats wide enough. I'm sorry, but this is just out of control.
Well, my understanding is that the neighborhood that the richest of the rich in Texas live in, which is in North Dallas, where Kelsey Warren lives, where Mark Cuban lives, I forgot the name of the town, but you have to see how high these homes go on the hill, where basically it's like a fortress. Like you said, are they going to build the moats wide enough to protect their property?
No,
because that's kind of what they're doing.
Well, ultimately, the real thing, and I've always thought this, we are one smart hacker away from somebody taking the money from the rich and giving it to the poor. And that's how it's going to be. I think it'll be cyber. I don't think it'll actually be like a physical. Although that too, because people are getting desperate and angry. But I think it's going to be a financial thing more so, and a digital thing more than a physical thing.
We're speaking with Julie Oliver and Mike Siegel of Ground Game Texas. One of the last things we want to talk about is income inequality. Now in Florida, we're the #1 state in the country for that. It's not a surprise. But I do think that much like Florida, Texas is, as you were saying, Mike, it's kind of ground zero for a populist uprising, because there are, Texas in a lot of places is a rich tourist industry. A lot of people work in, they work for the service industry. So that, whether they're bartenders, servers, all different types of service jobs. And I can't help but think that the right person or the right people speaking that language to them is really going to build a massive, no pun intended, ground game that's going to allow for this change to happen. Because I think a lot of people are just fed up. They just don't really know where to direct their anger. But in the state of Florida, income inequality is one of, without question, the top issues we have over development, and they grease the wheels of both sides of the aisle. So I'm curious as to what that looks like in Texas, and if that is one of the more major issues that not only you're dealing with, but you guys are looking to fight for.
I don't think it's been done yet to really mobilize poor people in Texas. I don't think it's been done yet. If you think about Beto's campaign, it really mobilized a lot of people. But if you looked at his most frequent volunteers and rally attendees, it was like middle-aged white women.
Yeah.
I love them. They were very helpful in my campaign as well. But in terms of speaking to poor people, we need to analyze that more as a left, because like if you go to a Walmart, if you're in these working class communities, people are so disconnected from this political conversation we're having right now. And to me, the closest that came to it was Bernie Sanders. And we never really got to see Bernie campaign in Texas, just for different factors. But to me, that kind of like real populist rhetoric, let's go after the billionaires kind of mentality, that hasn't really happened yet in Texas. And frankly, even though Julie and I, for example, ran very progressive campaigns, we were constrained by the ticket we were on. And, think about how much bandwidth the average person has to spend on politics. And then you're on a ticket with Joe Biden. You're on a ticket with MJ Hager, who is a very moderate Democratic nominee for Senate. Like, who has the bandwidth to listen to the congressional candidate? And so I'm still waiting for that kind of person or figure to emerge, like that kind of populist campaign to emerge. I mean, to me, we would like to do that at the city level. I mean, we would love for there to be a measure on the ballot that's like, do you want 1,000 jobs, yes or no? It could be that what we're doing is taking money from other sources that are pet projects of the powers that be to pay for those 1,000 jobs. But to me, that's one tactic we have. I don't know if you have more to add on that, Julie.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we're living in a city that it kind of is the exacerbation of exactly what you're talking about. It's an incredibly unequal and inequitable city. Housing is incredibly unaffordable. And we do, unfortunately, have a deep homelessness issue in population that most people here want to sweep under the rug, as evidenced by the election that happened this past May. And I do think that perhaps coming out of this particular year and seeing, I say this particular year with Proposition B in Austin, recriminalizing homelessness, again, trying to sweep it under the rug. I am hoping that we can get some folks and the service industry just being hammered by coronavirus and the shutdowns. That was a tragedy for people who are not making a living wage. And I'm with Mike. I'm hoping that we get that candidate that will make that a big issue and that people can rally around that, because there are a lot of people hurting. I mean, millions of people in Texas that are hurting. I think I read that there are like 1 in 4 people are housing insecure in Texas, meaning they are on the brink of losing what little housing they have. That 1 in 4. I mean, that's astonishing. And it's all part of income inequality, because we aren't paying people living wages. When I was campaigning, I met a woman in Killeen who was living out of her car with her 2 children. One was in 8th grade, one was in 10th grade. And she's like, Julie, I make $8 an hour and I work 3 part-time jobs. I can't make enough to prove to a landlord that I'm a good tenant.
Yeah.
Ironically, the next guest we have coming on is none other than Jordan Chariton of Status Quo, and he just spent a handful of weeks across the Rust Belt talking about the housing crisis, and this thing is going to blow up very, very soon. It's going to be ugly. And I think, again, having a living wage is nice, but there's so many infrastructural issues that exist. And it's ironic that you brought up Texas's 31st congressional district, because Jen and Donna happen to be very friendly. She is an awesome gal, and we obviously support her wholeheartedly. She is running again. And I'm hoping that you guys are going to play at least partially a role in trying to get Donna Imam across the finish line this time. I think she's got a great chance to do it. And, again, Austin is, really it is. Look, it's deep in the heart of Texas, because that is what it is. And, I think if there is going to be a change, I do think that is a flippable seat. And I think your organization, could do some really phenomenal work. Because like you said, the GOP puts in the work 24/7, 365. The Democratic Party does not do that. And again, to the credit of the Republican Party, and yes, to the credit of Donald Trump, they really honed in on the working class voter. And that matters because to them, this is life and death, even if the party ain't doing jack for them, and it isn't. But the messaging is key. But getting non-corporate representatives in is going to allow us to continue to build that grassroots movement that is going to be sustainable. Like you guys said, this is not about winning the next election. This is about winning the next generation. And I think we have a great chance to do that with guys like you really putting in the work and in the fight. And obviously we're trying to hold down the fort here in Florida. It's not easy, but you know, we're doing what we can. We're learning.
Our states are very similar. Our states are very similar. Absolutely. We have very similar stuff. We have a right to work state. We have a serious labor problem, and Democratic Party does not represent labor. And we are right now a country with no labor party. And that's the problem. So when people start talking about third parties, I'm still wanting to know where's the second, because we don't really have a labor party, and that's where it is. And Peter had a conversation with someone the other day that's trying to convince us that the Greens is the way to go, and it's just not. It's too niche. It even sounds niche. It sounds like a bunch of green hippies out in the woods doing God knows, and people aren't going to go for it. We need a labor party, and only a labor party is going to be broad enough to bring enough people in to actually be a viable party and not just a fringe. But yeah, that's exactly what I think. And I think that neither of our parties represents labor. That's what I think.
GroundGameTexas.org, guys. Final thoughts, Julie and Mike, please share with the audience. And guys, please go to the website if you can get involved, especially if you're in Texas. We really recommend that you go to an organization that is not going to be taking corporate special interest money. This is the blueprint that we need to follow, and they are definitely going to make an impact. So please, the floor is yours, guys.
I'll just say quickly, if you are in Austin, if you're watching and you're in Austin, please come sign one of our petitions. We have 25,000 signatures to collect by July 20th, which is now just 19 days away. So please go there. And if you want to volunteer with us, we would love to have you. We're a nonprofit. We rely on volunteer, footwork. And so please sign up to get involved. We have a website, groundgametexas.org, and you can sign up there. If you want to learn more about this ballot initiative that's in Austin, go to GGTX. We're trying to make it super simple. GGTX.org/Austin. And Mike, I'll turn to you.
Well, right on. Well, Jen, and thank you all so much for having us on. I love this camaraderie among the leftist candidates, past, present, and future. I mean, Cori Bush, to me, she's the model. I mean, we need more Cori Bushes. And y'all mentioned Donnie Mom. We don't know what the congressional districts are going to look like here. They might be dramatically redrawn. But we're hopeful that, for example, if Austin gets a standalone district, we'll have a real progressive representative, because we see how important every single one, the squad plus, whatever you want to call them, every single one of those folks is so precious. And so what we're trying to do is, one at a time, one city at a time, one candidate at a time, lift people up, and let's just keep putting people in positions of power step by step. I mean, let's remain hopeful, right? That generational change is possible, that we're not going to lose to the Blue Lives Matter fascists, and that they're not going to just hire more cops to protect their mansions. I mean, let's hope that we can turn this around a bit by bit, and we're trying to do our part here in Texas.
That's awesome.
Julie Oliver, Mike Siegel, thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. It was nice to meet you, even though we were on the same slate. It was nice to meet you.
We will definitely be seeing you guys around, and we will definitely continue to talk about your organization. We hope to have you back in the near future.
Thanks so much, y'all. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. So again, it's this is what you need to do. Is it important to elect representatives? Yes, it is. But the infrastructure is everything.
That's why I'm always telling people the campaign is almost as important as the win. It's the momentum that you build on a campaign. If you keep it going, that's what leads to the next campaign, whether it's for the same candidate or a different candidate or whatever. But you just got to keep pushing the issues forward. And I appreciate what they're doing. I didn't realize Texas was so far even behind us with the marijuana.
Oh,
that's kind of sad.
But again, the difference is that they actually do have a, sort of like a progressive streak, and they do have more of an opportunity with certain candidates. Julie did well, Mike did well, Donna obviously did very well.
Now they, to me, sounded like they had the support of the party. They both ran against the Republicans.
They did because they ran against the GOP. They were not running against an incumbent. And that's where the rubber meets the road. That's always been the biggest issue. That
was Jessica Cisneros. And of course you have Pelosi endorsing Cuellar.
But that's only going to last for so much longer. That's the point. And that's why these are the types of issues that are infinitely more important that we talk about. If you're in progressive media, if you're just in non-corporate media, these are the things that we really need to be addressing. And not that the whole issue, and we'll discuss it with Jordan in regards to, what's been going on with Jimmy and TYT. It's one thing.
I don't want to talk about that at all.
That's not the point. The point is you can talk about it for 5 minutes, but to talk about it for 5 weeks.
I don't want to talk about it at all. I don't understand why we're discussing that. That's ridiculous. This is what I want to say to that. Grow the fuck up, people. Grow the fuck up.
Where's our money?
I don't
care. We're not going to get any money.
I don't care because I am so sick of hearing about everything having to do with.
We're not talking about you, dude. You can keep asking about it, but hey,
I'm not dealing with that.
You got to bring it on yourself, dude. And the bottom line is this: as we were concluding the conversation with Julie and with Mike, the housing crisis, is coming. If it's not already here.
No, we're in it. It's just going to get worse when the moratorium's up. We're going to have like up to 30 million people homeless. I don't think people can wrap their heads around what we're really talking about, because the exponential increase is going to be just so blatantly visible to everybody. This isn't like a small change. It's going to be massive.
It's going to be huge, and that's not a good thing.
No.
And again, there are so many people that could be using their resources to really highlight investigative journalism that is doing the job on the ground.
Yes.
Because that's what we need to do. We cannot, and again, as I was alluding to, if you want to deal with the drama in the moment and state your claim as to where you stand, that's perfectly fine. But to talk about it all day, every day, yes, drama gets clicks, but it doesn't get results.
It gets me to get up and leave.
And again, we're about results. So that's what we want to do. And we want to highlight the people that are doing the work that is actually going to make the long-term impact and changes that we need to make. And there is nobody, and I mean nobody, especially on the domestic side. We've got some really solid people like Aaron Mate, who's on more of the international side. But as far as domestic investigative journalism goes, there is nobody better than Jordan Chariton of Status Quo. And he's here. Jordan, welcome to Generational Change once again, my friend.
Apparently, I'm underdressed.
Are you?
Are you kidding me? I'm wearing a tank top and sitting in a trailer on a hemp farm.
This one rule where I actually attempt to look professional and
he tries on Thursdays.
To some degree on a once a week, but on Casual Monday. That's when we wear like a regular Generational Change T-shirt. So we're not really going we're not trying to be too fancy, but hey, I'm trying to class this place up a little bit.
He's not doing it because it's still my name in the thing, and I'm still not wearing sleeves. So I don't know where you're going with that, but whatever.
All right, so let's start from the top. You have been on the road for how long? Is it 2 weeks, 3 weeks? I know you were out there for quite a while.
Little over 2 weeks. We just got back.
And so you started in Pennsylvania, went through West Virginia, and then went to Kentucky. Was there any other stops that you made along the way?
Yeah, so we started in Philadelphia. We were there for a couple of days. Then we went to Akron, Ohio, which is near Cleveland. Then we went to Cleveland. Then we went to Louisville. I was there for 4 days, I think. And we finished in West Virginia for a couple of days.
And what was the nature of this trip? Like, obviously you recognize what's going on around the country, but what was the impetus to go to those particular places when you went? Like, what was the draw?
Yeah. So, as a bootstrapped indie outlet that it doesn't take any corporate money, you kind of have to be geographical. So we don't have the money to, fly to multiple states and rent cars everywhere. So it just kind of made sense driving wise, although it's a long drive through these states. They were close enough to each other that we could hit all those states. Myself and Jen, co-founder of Status Quo, and my partner, we were having a conversation one day, and I said, you know what, honestly, like, isn't America a pandemic in itself? Isn't just this country beyond COVID a pandemic? So we kind of called it the other pandemic. That's what we called the trip, America. And I wanted to really focus a lot on the alternate reality where, the media is pushing that things are getting back to normal. The economy is roaring back. Jobs are coming back. Meanwhile, homelessness is exploding, even worse than it already has been. There's an eviction apocalypse, which we learned has already came. We learned on the trip that people have been evicted throughout the pandemic, which we can get into. I also, part of what we do is basically keep going back to places where the cameras have long gone. So I wanted to continue covering what I think is beyond, but other than Flint, the biggest cover up in America, which is the Breonna Taylor's murder and the cover up after the fact. And then, I think there's a lot of attention on Joe Manchin in the media, but not actual reporting and investigation into Joe Manchin. So I wanted to go to West Virginia. As I know, from doing this for many years, you kind of find out where the bodies are buried, not from talking to pundits, but from talking to actual residents and activists. And so we wanted to go to West Virginia, where I learned a whole lot about Joe Manchin, a lot that we haven't even reported. So those are the kind of core things going into it we wanted to report on. But with all these trips, you go in with an objective to cover certain things, but things pop up along the way that you didn't expect. So that kind of happened too. But I will tell you, I mean, it's eerily similar to 2008, 2009, when, 2011, 2012, with the job numbers artificially going down, the media, the Democratic Party at the time were pushing things are, getting better. Meanwhile, millions were being foreclosed on. People who used to have full-time jobs were now driving Uber and Lyft on top of a shitty job. So there was an alternative reality then. I actually think it's much, much wider in terms of the cognitive dissonance and the complete distortions and lies that the media are painting from what we saw on the ground.
Yeah.
I think, the best place to start, as we, were talking briefly before, is the housing crisis. I don't think it's getting anywhere. I mean, again, it's getting some attention, but it's not getting wall-to-wall coverage attention the way that it needs to. And when I just want
to cut you off. This is not a housing crisis. This is economic terrorism. What's going on?
Oh yeah.
And I think sometimes because of terms like gentrification, which a lot of people don't even know what that means, or the housing crisis, what's going on right now is literally, to me, economic terrorism. Sorry to cut you off.
Not at all. I mean, again, this is a topic, for those who don't know, Jordan and I are actually personal friends. This is an issue that is very near and dear to him, and it is not getting the type of attention that it really needs to be getting, because this is what is going to cause the literally the ground to break in this country, is when people are no longer able to put a roof over their head. And we have a crisis with that as it stands right now, but it's going to become an avalanche. There are tens of millions of people who are at a point where they're not going to be able to remain in a house or in an apartment. They're going to be kicked out. And I think that also is where organizations like BlackRock plays a role. But what did you learn in terms of the housing crisis, just going through Philadelphia, going through, I think if you were in Morgantown, I know you were in Louisville. I'm curious as to what has been the overall consensus in terms of the people that you've spoken to that are potentially facing eviction.
Yeah, I just want to highlight also, sometimes it's me who gets credit, but Jen, my partner, was with me. Yeah. John, our cameraman, so it wasn't just me. But, first let's start with, the federal government and the media, pushed the headlines. The CARES Act originally, then Biden, his COVID bill. But if you actually look deeper into those headlines, first off, there was tens of billions of dollars that were supposed to go towards rental relief during the pandemic. And that money was going to landlords who we think were supposed to be using it as payment for their tenants during a pandemic that killed over 600,000 people. What actually happened, we learned, was a significant portion of landlords and slumlords all across this country were essentially double dipping taking the rent money, taking the rental assistance money from the federal government and evicting their tenants. And they were using the rental relief money to do improvements on the property, redevelop the property, or flip the property. So we met a lot of people, and we haven't even published all the interviews, who were illegally evicted. There was major loopholes in the eviction moratorium. It really only protected people who couldn't pay, but landlords, because of the loopholes, started evicting people for nuisance violations, started evicting people, your lawn's not mowed or you're not keeping the property upright, evicted people because they're not on contract when the lease was up, but the landlord wouldn't let them re-sign the lease. So essentially what this pandemic was, and Naomi Klein talks about this in Shock Doctrine, and essentially was a opportunity, you know, what does Rahm Emanuel say? Never let an opportunity go to waste.
Yep.
Was an opportunity for real estate developers who, by the way, are in collusion with local and city governments. We actually learned in Philadelphia, there's real estate developers who are city council members and still are real estate developers.
No conflict of interest there.
Yeah, seriously.
That are literally, basically the landlords have stolen the money from the federal government with no accountability, just like, you know, the bailout in 2009 to the banks. No strings, no accountability, nothing, no eyes. Same thing here. They stole the money, evicted in a lot of cases. I mean, we haven't gone all across the country. Really poor, black people, brown people, white people. Jen actually went into a home in Louisville that literally had shit piping into it, sewage from other homes piping into it, all sorts of code violations, holes in the wall. This was an autistic trans man that lived there, and he was being evicted despite all of this. So what we learned on one end was the money has been stolen. Hundreds of billions of dollars, state to state, was given to landlords who essentially, not all, but a very large amount, pocketed it and then tossed people to the streets. One woman in Louisville we interviewed, really nice woman. She worked for the U.S. Census Bureau, was laid off because of the pandemic, eligible for unemployment, didn't get it. Her lease was up in December 2020. Her landlord wouldn't let her re-sign it. She ends up being evicted in March. The only reason she didn't actually be homeless is because Black Lives Matter Louisville got an Airbnb for people like her. There were more than her in that Airbnb. She would have been actually homeless without the support of Black Lives Matter. She just found a place 4 months after being evicted. We interviewed a construction worker in a park in Philadelphia. I've seen a lot of homelessness in San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver. I had never seen anything like this park in Philadelphia. It's called McPherson Square in Kensington, which is a really rundown, poor area. Mm-hmm. Just a sea of homeless people. We interviewed a construction worker laid off during the pandemic, sleeping in a park for over a year under a train. Basically said, if the city got money from the federal government, we didn't see any of it here. Fortunately, you know, sometimes good things happen when you actually leave your studio. Our interview with him got a lot of praise and attention, and people, one viewer reached out to us and now is setting him up with a job. So something came from that. But between the landlords pocketing the money and evicting people, between the loopholes in this eviction law, I think even I was wrongly under the assumption that the apocalypse was coming when the moratorium's up. No. The apocalypse was already there. We just didn't know it.
Right. Also, I want to ask you something that I've been noticing is that we're talking about people that just don't have homes. There is this whole slew of people that are living in tents and renting out their homes or Airbnb-ing their homes or whatever they're doing. So because they can't even afford to live in the homes that they do have. And I think that is something that is not being calculated when we're talking about like homeless population. I cannot tell you the amount of people I've met on Airbnb that are crashing at someone's house or living in a tent because they can't afford and they need to be able to rent their own property. I mean, this is out of control.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, in Philly, Louisville, Cleveland, and West Virginia, we saw tent cities. So it's happening everywhere. And there are people, I remember in Portland, this was pre-pandemic. I covered a tent city when I got there for interviews, it was empty because people were working.
Yeah.
So these are like working poor people. I'm literally trying to set up interviews now with people that work at Amazon full time that are sleeping in their cars in the parking lot. So yeah, no, this is beyond. It's beyond really a crisis. It is really the legalized auction of a country to BlackRock, real estate developers, Koch brothers, Democratic Party donors, Republican Party donors, nonprofits that are in on it. And yeah, as far as I know, it's not really getting any attention. And it's not that like Status Quo or I are so special. You don't have to go far if you go out and just talk to people or go to different cities. Not everyone, can do that, but you don't have to go far. It's just smacking you in the face.
Yeah. I actually drive around with a cooler in my car that I keep, non-perishables in, and I actually give out brown bags of food. One time I actually gave a bag of weed because I didn't have anything else, but he seemed very appreciative. But the fact is, I am prepared at any given moment that I'm going to see people that don't have food, that don't have access to food. And in Miami, what they've been doing, in addition to obviously trying to criminalize homelessness, is they actually bulldoze their little tent encampments. They go with the police, they go with the garbage trucks, and they just take all their stuff and just shove it in the garbage, and they just have to start all over again. This is something that's been happening pretty routinely in Dade County. I don't know how these places are standing, like in Philadelphia. How are they not getting washed away? Like, how are the municipalities even allowing this to exist?
The municipalities are one and the same with the real estate developers. That's why.
Right. But I mean, they don't want the homeless encampments. That's the thing. It's like, they don't want that there. They're creating it, but they don't want it there. So, I mean, like, every time there's an encampment where we are, it eventually gets bulldozed.
Yeah, no, that's what they're doing. We covered one day in Kensington, which is a really poor part of Philadelphia that is being attempts to be gentrified. We covered, police were expected to do sweeps, which is kicking homeless people out of their corners or parks, evicting them. In many cases, the police seize their tents, their property. And there were protesters there against what the police were doing. But there were also protesters on the other side of the street who want the homeless gone. And those were the residents. And, at first I was like, this is disgusting. Who could be out here attacking the homeless? But the more you talk to the residents, you understand they're also like one paycheck away or not getting a paycheck from being homeless. And there is, a sea of needles in that neighborhood. There's poop all over the ground on their, they can't take their kids to parks, this and that. So it's not as black and white where like, you can understand why they're upset, but I was trying to get, when I interviewed some of the residents who wanted the homeless people out here, aren't you kind of focused on blaming the wrong group here? Why aren't you at City Hall? Because City Hall has more than enough money to beautify downtown Philadelphia. This isn't just Philly. I mean, this is every city. 10 blocks are beautified, millions of dollars. I mean, all Rahm Emanuel did was push poor people out of Chicago, push black people out of Chicago, and make a beautiful river walk. That's basically all he did, other than cover up the murder of a 16-year-old. But I actually got some people to change their mind by saying, why aren't you down at City Hall? Because City Hall and the government, by the way, who got hundreds of millions from the federal government, can easily build affordable housing, this and that. They don't want to. And the reason is, number one, I'm learning more and more. There's a lot of real estate developers either also are politicians that still have financial interest in real estate, or are basically just, there's a swinging revolving door in Louisville, I'm learning right now, that literally one of the worst slumlords in the country, their CFO left and is now working for the Louisville Metro government running evictions. So it's just this cesspool of corruption where, you would think it's in the government, federal, city, state, to, get the homeless off the street, give them housing. But really, most of these cities, what their real goal is to just widen as much as they can that 10-block radius that they've gentrified, and gentrify the whole city with high-rise condos, Whole Foods. I mean, Jesus, at the end of my honeymoon, we were in San Francisco. If you've ever been to Haight Street, which is one of the last bastions of like the 60s, there's a friggin' Whole Foods on the corner. Yeah. I mean, it's so jarring. So, you know, yeah, what we saw was really these cities are essentially trying to disappear poor people, homeless people. And let's be clear, a lot of these people that are homeless, I guess I never realized this, but part of why I like going in the field is you learn stuff for yourself too, that you could then report. A lot of these homeless people, even if they had the opportunity to leave, a lot of them won't leave where they are because this is their family and they don't want to leave. They're like in this park I was in, they literally, they're each other's survival. They look out for each other, their family, because they're all each other has. So one person I talked to said, yeah, if I had an opportunity, I wouldn't go unless they get help too. So that's part of it. But overall, to say it simply, this is a housing crisis, but it's also a corruption crisis, because this is intentional. It's 100%
right. It isn't that there
intentional.
aren't enough houses. It would be a housing crisis if we didn't have enough houses. We have more than enough houses. There are so many empty houses. We keep building condos. We keep building stuff that nobody is going to be able to afford to live in. And then in here, they're also going to fall off into the ocean as well. So, but they keep building them. They just keep. And then there's homeless people. So it isn't, you're right. It's not a housing crisis. It's a morality crisis is what it is. I mean,
and by the way, you know, we heard a lot in the Democratic primary. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? Nobody's talking about, you know, bombing Syria. How much does that cost? Nobody's talking about, you know, the tax breaks for Trump's donors and Democratic Party donors. Nobody's talking about, oh, yeah, we're getting out of Afghanistan, but we're technically still in Iraq and many other countries. All like actually getting the homeless off the street into affordable housing. And it's not just that. You need mental health services. You need drug rehabilitation services. If they did that, you'd actually help the economy on top of it's the right thing to do and helping your fellow man and woman. Because if you could actually support these people to becoming productive members of society, not that they're not humans, but get them into jobs, it only helps the economy and helps them. But this is a drop in the bucket compared to the bullshit money we spend everywhere else. Yeah. And it's just infuriating because honestly, one person comes to mind. I was interviewing a homeless man. I mean, this guy was an entrepreneur. A lot of people, you know, just stereotypes have this image of just like dirty, grimy drug addicts. But most of the homeless people I meet and speak with are smarter than any pundit I've ever seen on CNN.
Yeah, not okay. Low bar. But I would just, you know, I think, and I've met a lot of homeless people. There's always going to be an element of society that wants to sort of live on the fringe. There's always going to be, I call those people like, you know, your hobos, and there are those people. But what we're seeing is mass amounts of average people living on the streets. That's not normal. It's not something that's okay. And these are working people. These are people that work. I think it's like half of the homeless people actually work. I mean, you did something I remember in Seattle where you were talking to people and it was like a huge percentage of them were full-time workers. And so this is not a lazy problem. I mean, this is a significant, you're right. It's just all filth.
Well, I also think real quick, at the end of the day, I mean, it's just the old record spinning over and over again. So this is the same thing that happened in 08, 09, only to me, worse. Yeah. I mean, it's literally the oligarchs blowing up the country and the economy. In this case, to me, Trump caused this. I've never had Trump derangement syndrome, but honestly, right. if an intelligent soul was in office at the time, or a non-corrupt soul at the time, you simply would have shut down the country for 2 months, not each state doing its own thing. Executive order, whatever, you do what Europe did, you pay, the government backstops the payrolls, you keep everybody apart from each other, aside from essential services, and that's that. And you would have had, it wouldn't have evaporated COVID, but it would have made a significant difference. no, nothing was shut down. Even New York City, that was shut down. People were in Central Park. People were taking subways. So they created this pandemic. Also, Trump. I mean, it's kind of like on a bigger scale what happened in Flint. He knew about COVID in January or February. He did nothing. He covered it up. So the government creates the issue. Part of why Trump didn't take aggressive action in the beginning is because the donors didn't want him to shut down the economy. And we know what happened. And now all the vultures, which are the banks, BlackRock, the remaining Koch brother who's buying up all these homes, nonprofits, I'm learning more and more, real estate developers, all these people behind public-private partnerships, which is just a code word for gentrification, they're pouncing like the hyenas in Lion King.
Yeah.
Speaking with Jordan Chariton of Status Quo, I think, again, I was going to leave it to the end to talk about, the corporate media and the impact that they have on this particular issue. But one of the topics we did cover in News and Amuse at the beginning of the show was the article in Vox that came out basically telling people, you had the one article we didn't even address, the one article saying that you should be content to be a renter for the rest of your life. But then there's the other one that says this is not Wall Street's fault. Like they're not to blame for this crisis. And I'm thinking,
who said this? Vox?
Vox.
Yeah. And again, this speaks to the greater issue of just how detrimental the Fourth Estate is to our society, because they're just mouthpieces for the people in charge. They will pay as they must to continue this charade of thinking, yeah, things are really bad, but it isn't what you think it is, even though that's exactly what you think it is. And I am curious, because I know you talk to a lot of people at the heads of corporate media outlets. Is anyone even attempting to make a push to try to cover this in any capacity without naming any names?
No.
I've been watching you for it seems years now, exposing really, really horrible, corrupt, filthy things. And the media doesn't really care. They're not interested. And I just think that we need to just accept it for what it is. They're all now no different than let's say Entertainment Tonight or whatever that is. They're not news. They're not interested in news. They're not interested in investigating. They're just not interested.
It's actually worse than you think. It's not only that they're not interested. In some cases, we've had media outlets stop our stories from coming out. Yeah. So yeah.
I'm not surprised because they're not. Why do we even call them media? They're not. They're just propaganda stenographers. It's a very big difference.
Well, as you always like to, if there are certain people you like to lace into in corporate media, and Wolf Blitzer definitely catches a lot of your ire because he's
but Wolf's down in Florida doing the work. So
of course he is, and I think that. But ironically, he really had the most important moment I've ever seen when it came with Pelosi. I think that moment when and the only reason he brought it up, I truly believe this, because as you know, Jen and I were in DC not too long ago to be on Tim Pool's show. And the one thing that I took away from just walking in the city was how many homeless encampments were everywhere. And they literally were everywhere. And I'm thinking that Blitzer, who lives in DC, probably just couldn't avoid seeing it every day and thinking, man, this really is a problem. Maybe I should talk about it with the person who could actually affect change, who could actually do something about it.
Maybe I should investigate this further.
Yeah. And her response is, do you know who you're talking to? We're going to get this guy off the air. Can I get somebody else to interview me who isn't going to ask me to actually govern properly? It's so incredible. But I think that interview, for anybody who's never seen it, and to Blitzer's credit, and you can rarely give it, he actually pushed back on her a little bit. He did. He tried to basically tell her, no, Congresswoman, you're actually wrong about this. This is a crisis. I'm not going to say it the way Jordan Chariton of Status Quo is going to say it and basically blow up your spot. But I'm trying to get you to recognize that there is a crisis coming in this country. And if we don't deal with this, it is going to be an epidemic proportions that you can't even begin to recognize. And as Jen likes to say, you will not be able to build your moats wide enough. And I think that's a good segue to Joe Manchin and the things that you've been discovering in West Virginia, because it seems to me that most people know on the
Joe
surface,
Manchin.
I think most people know just how corrupt he is, particularly his daughter, Heather Bresch, who is the EpiPen CEO of the EpiPen organization, and the price gouging that is involved, and the special, sweetheart deals that she gets from Capitol Hill. I mean, again, it's so transparent, the nepotism that's there, but his corruption, as it is, with a lot of other representatives, runs very deep. But I don't think people really understand. Like I tell people, at the national level, people understand how corrupt Debbie Wasserman Schultz is. You don't know what she's involved with here in Broward County. Could you explain to people just how bad things are with Joe Manchin in West Virginia, to the people who really don't know just how deep his corruption goes?
Yeah, so I think it's important, and you know this, Peter, and you know this, Jen. Obviously the sexy topic is national politics, the DNC. But really, where you get screwed the strongest is on the local level. And for how corrupt the DNC is, pretty much every state party is equally corrupt, just in different ways. Same thing with local environmental departments, that every state has their own little EPA. So first off, West Virginia is one of the poorest states of the country. I did not know this until being there, but West Virginia, up until the most recent decade, used to be a blue state.
Labor, because they're minors.
Oh, absolutely. That's a Rust Belt state.
Yeah.
That's a Rust Belt state.
Used to be a blue state. So what I learned was, first of all, Joe Manchin, just look at Debbie Wasserman Schultz in Florida. Joe Manchin runs the state party, and he basically runs West Virginia. The state party officials don't go to the bathroom without his permission. So we learned that, number one, Manchin has been sabotaging progressive candidates in West Virginia since he's been a senator in 2010. But it even goes back before that. We learned that in 1996, so we're talking a long time ago, Manchin lost the governor's primary, the Democratic primary for governor. He lost it to a progressive named Charlotte Pritt, strong union supporter, big on environmental justice in a fossil fucker state, just progressive, strongly progressive. She was leading she beat Manchin. It was actually his first political defeat. What did Manchin do? He started a Democrats for Underwood, her Republican opponent in the general election. Even despite that, Pritt was leading in the polls heading into the final week. What did Manchin do? He coordinated with the Republicans in West Virginia to run ads saying she wants to teach first graders about condoms. She wants to give children access to pornographic videos. And she lost. This was in the 90s, before he was even a senator. She sued the Republican National Committee for defamation. And the Republican National Committee's response was, Joe Manchin. Like, literally,
right.
The ads aren't why you lost. Joe Manchin started a Democrats for Underwood, blah, 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 blah. And fast forward to 2020, Paula Jean Swearengin, who, put up a good fight in 2018 in her first race against Joe Manchin for the Democratic nomination for Senate there. I think she got like 30% of the vote as a first-time candidate against Manchin, which is not terrible. She won the nomination in 2020 and was headed into a general election against Shelley Moore Capito, who was basically Mitch McConnell without the turkey neck, and is a Republican and anti-labor, fossil fuel, all that. And what Joe Manchin did was a little bit more subtle this time. He started doing tweets saying, I can't work. I look forward to continuing to work with Shelley Moore. The state party would not allow Paula Jean to even speak at their events at the behest of Manchin. Paula Jean couldn't even get into union halls, who had close ties to Manchin. And Shelley Moore Capito won significantly. Was a pandemic. Paula Jean couldn't campaign normally, but basically every avenue, these avenues, Jen, is running yourself. Every avenue was basically shut down for her. And the media wouldn't touch her. And a lot of this had to do with Joe Manchin. So everybody looks at what he's doing in Congress now, but Bernie, whatever you think of him now, because everybody's got an opinion, he was right. It really does start at the local level. And senators like Joe Manchin, who are blazingly corrupt, are obstructing progressive change at the local level. The other thing that we learned, West Virginia is obviously a majority white state, but there are, African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanics, and essentially the state party has not done anything on affirmative action or have a program for diversity for decades. Like the DNC charter of 1974, not to get so in the weeds, basically said state parties have to create an affirmative action plan. Shockingly, the West Virginia State Party never did so. And now, only because grassroots organizers forced them to, they created an affirmative action plan. But guess who created it? The white chairman of the party, who literally wouldn't let members of the affirmative action committee into the meeting to vote on the affirmative action plan that they had no say in. She is a strong ally of Joe Manchin. To be clear, I cannot confirm this. I don't know if this is fact, but there's a lot of talk that she's actually related to Joe Manchin. I asked the West Virginia State Democratic Party to confirm that. They didn't respond. So if she's not, they didn't tell me that. But it's just this.
There's a deliverance joke in there somewhere, but
right. We also learned that from speaking with people, Manchin has met with activists and things like that, and basically told them without saying it to take a hike, and that Manchin. It's not just the funding he gets from fossil fuel companies. It's literally they are trying to make West Virginia essentially a subsidiary of the fossil fuel company, and just doesn't matter if people live there or not. Basically, just like a wasteland.
That West Virginia is District 12, right?
Yeah,
because that's what it is. District 12 West Virginia's District 12, and they just don't care.
So they're basically trying to make it a human sacrifice zone, and they don't really care about the residents. And the truth is, West Virginia, I think, is a really good example of the fact that we're not so far apart in a lot of cases, progressives and conservatives, because most of the state hates Joe Manchin. He only won in 2018 by, I think, 1 or 2 percentage points. In the south of West Virginia, very unpopular. And a lot of the Republicans that voted for Trump, like Bernie too, Bernie wasn't available. Bernie won every county in West Virginia, and they voted for Trump basically under the guise of, well, we know they're con man and woman, the Democrats. So let's give this guy a chance talking our language. Obviously, they got hoodwinked, but it's a really populist state. It's a really old, like kind of New Deal, labor state. Yeah. But because there's no real populist choice, then they get sucked in by the culture wars and phony populism. And that's happening not just in West Virginia. But to put it in a bow, really what we learned is Joe Manchin is one of the most corrupt politicians, and that's saying something. And really, what he's doing nationally and blocking things is not so much about bipartisanship and saving democracy. It's basically about his career and his post-political career.
That is a perfect, and that speaks to even greater truth about his votes, about his daughter's basic immunity from any type of prosecution as it relates to the ridiculous price gouging and the countless lives that perhaps have been lost. And if those who don't know about EpiPen, I highly recommend you read up on it.
By the way, West Virginia has many cancer alleys because of the coal industry.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Oh,
they are also they are also number one in the opioid epidemic, which is a massive problem in a lot of those communities, that a lot of the same communities that are ravaged by whatever has been left over from the coal industry. They're now being ravaged exponentially harder by the opioid crisis. And I know that that's a massive problem there. And I can't imagine that Joe Manchin cares too much about that.
No, he definitely does not care about that. But Joe Manchin, like a lot of people on Capitol Hill that are bought and paid for by corporate special interests, only care about themselves. We see that all the time. And this is just something that obviously trickles down into a lot of other areas. And this, of course, takes the road trip right into Louisville.
Well, real quick, sorry to cut you off.
Sure. No,
I didn't realize this, but one of the reasons Shelley Moore Capito was able to win over Paula Jean Swearengin, besides Joe Manchin's sabotage, is because Manchin and Shelley Moore co-sponsored United Mine Workers. I don't remember the name of it, but basically a mine workers pension law with Mitch McConnell that basically shored up mine workers' pensions, expanded their health care. And how do they do that? Not by making the actual corporations pay for it, but having taxpayers pay for it, their pensions and expanded health care for the miners. So not the corporations that had unsafe working conditions and gave them the black lung disease. We're paying for that. But Manchin and Capito got credit for basically, serving up some funds to the miners, when in reality it's, they deserve those funds, but they basically did it as a giant corporate welfare.
Yeah, and there's no question that he he loves the position that he's in. That's why they refer to him as President Manchin in some respects. But, they're only going to highlight, things that are, like you said, that are sexy. They're not going to talk about the fact that he basically, it's not basically, he is a Republican. He's just, he figured out a way to play both sides almost perfectly. He's embraced by the GOP and he's embraced by the Democrats because they have no spine. And they basically are like, well, he's got a D in front of his name, so I guess we have to go along to get along.
No, they like him because he gets to do what they want to do and be the fall guy.
That's a great point.
He's the fall guy.
He is. And he's much better, 10 times better at it than Sinema is. And I think that that's why she's much more of a loose end that they'll have to deal with, because they do not want to deal with her. But Manchin,
she's a liability.
Yeah, she is.
She's a liability.
For whatever reason, they kind of like this idea of Manchin, who just allows every criticism to just roll right off his back. But I do think that when you can see the corruption up close and personal and how it deeply affects, West Virginia, along with Mississippi, are the two poorest states in the country. And it is a working class state that has been completely ravaged for decades. Like you said, this was a reliable blue state for many, many years. It wasn't until, and I would have to check. I don't
this past decade.
Yeah. I can't remember if Al Gore won West Virginia in 2000, but if he didn't, it was very close. But ever since then, it's just kind of gone that way. And a lot of it just has to do with the reconstruction of the Democratic Party to basically be a coastal elite party with a couple of major cityscapes in between, like Chicago, Austin, and Denver. But once you get away from that, it's a coastline party in many ways. And that, of course, takes us obviously to Louisville now. And the Democrats like to make a really big stink when a sexy topic is on TV. And of course, the whole issue with police brutality and Black Lives Matter, it gets ratings. And so when it's getting ratings, it's good to talk about it, and it's good to have this sort of divide and conquer strategy. Breonna Taylor, of course, was at the center of one of the worst cases that has existed in the country. Obviously, the worst, of course, being George Floyd. But her case, Tamir Rice's case, these are serious freaking cases in regards to dealing with actual police reform. And it seems to me, as was evidenced by, with the handful of videos that I watched that you did to cover it, there is a massive cover-up going on in Louisville right now. And this has as much to do with the fact that they don't want any type of reform, and they kind of want this story to go away. But it's not going away. And if you can elaborate on that, we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, so let me first say, for people to understand, journalistically, it's not easy to prove a cover-up. Flint, for example, I've been working on 5 years on this, with Jen. And it took me 17 times going there to build enough sources, obtain certain, material and documents to really crystallize that there was a cover-up. And we have another story coming out about that soon. This is not hard. What the Breonna Taylor case is not hard. It's blinking red lights, a cover up. And it, obviously this week, Bill Cosby and prosecutorial misconduct was in the news because outrageously his conviction was overturned. Let's start with the Attorney General of Kentucky, who's, I believe, related to Mitch McConnell somehow. I don't know how, but I think he might be married to Mitch McConnell's granddaughter, I think. Daniel Cameron happens to be African-American. He literally was caught lying about the grand jury process. There was a grand jury. He announced that they didn't, they agreed with him and his investigation that there was nothing criminal to charge here. He said that there was a witness that saw police announce themselves as police before barging into Breonna's apartment. Number one, that one witness originally said he heard nothing, and the police brought him back in 2 months and coerced him to change his story. There were 12 other witnesses that said, we didn't hear anything from the police announcing themselves. So that's the first bucket. He lied about that. Then 3 grand jurors came out anonymously and said, literally, they were not given the option to charge any of the officers criminally. And he lied. So right there, if you had any type of justice system, immediately the federal government would intervene, possibly impeach Daniel Cameron, and there would have to be a whole new grand jury. But that went on. The media did their, he said, she said bullshit, and life moved on. Then other facts came out. Literally, this was a gentrification scheme gone wrong. So let me explain it. Essentially, west side of Louisville is deeply, deeply poor. And the city government is trying to gentrify it. It's majority black and deeply poor. So essentially, one block that they were trying to get rid of and bulldoze the homes and get rid of all the people, there was one holdout that they couldn't get the home. His name was Jamarcus Glover. He was allegedly dealing drugs. So there's emails that came out where the mayor, Democratic mayor of Louisville, his office was in communication with Louisville PD about the Jamarcus Glover drug case. Why would the mayor's office care about a singular drug case, right? So why? Because they wanted to seize his home because it was the only home left on the block that they couldn't get as part of a urban redevelopment program. And they couldn't find evidence that he was dealing drugs. So what happened is they were surveilling him, and they found him coming out of Breonna Taylor's apartment, who didn't live in that neighborhood, with a package. So they literally went to a judge and fraudulently, without evidence, said, we believe he is diverting drugs to her apartment and picking it up there. No evidence. She didn't have a criminal record. No evidence. They give this to a judge. Judge signs the no-knock warrant. We know what happened. But the root of it was what we're talking about here, gentrification. Because Breonna Taylor would not have been involved if they could have proved he was selling drugs separately. So that's another layer of this, which, other than a few outlets, I haven't seen much coverage of the fact this was a gentrification ploy. Number 3, the police told Breonna Taylor's family there was no body cameras from before, from leading up to it, or the shots. Breonna Taylor's family lawyer, found there were up to 30 body cameras from that night. So from leading up to it and during the actual event. The Louisville police lied on the police report. I mean, you could keep going with the list. They lied on the police report. So I've given you many, many different layers here, and nothing has been done. There's an FBI investigation, a DOJ investigation. Yeah, well, remember Eric Garner? Years of a Department of Justice investigation that started under Obama, ended in Trump. They didn't charge Officer Daniel Pantaleo with strangling Eric Garner to death. So who the hell knows how long this FBI investigation is going to happen? But everything is connected, because what I was telling you about the gentrification is going on between an unholy alliance between real estate developers who are buying off city governments, nonprofits who are somehow involved with all of this, and city government that's working with the nonprofits and real estate developers to basically shoot a gentrification cannon at poor black people and get them out, poor Hispanic people too, poor white people. There's been nothing done. Essentially the Louisville investigation is over, even though the attorney general has been proven to have lied. Number two, you want to talk about Democratic woke signaling? Downtown Louisville, they have signs up on the street poles, Breeway, like a freeway, Breeway with her image. That's that's not even the city government that put it up.
That's about as woke as it gets, baby.
You know what? That's almost a candidate for Kente Cloth Tales. We have a segment called the Kente Cloth Tales.
Yeah, it's worse.
An anthology of tone deafness.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
The city government actually and the police have actually forced. There was a park right across from City Hall called Injustice Square, which was the ground zero for the protesters down there. They forced all the protesters out. Can't be there anymore. They're talking about putting up a museum for her or something like that. And I spoke with her aunts, two of her aunts, who basically said, they didn't say this exactly, but basically said, how do you commemorate or memorialize somebody without giving them justice? I don't care about the street signs or, whatever. And even justice is a hard word because there will be no justice. You can't bring her back, but accountability. So essentially from what I have learned, and I'm still digging, this is a massive, massive cover up. I've also learned, it's another layer that we don't have time for. Oh yeah, there's a lot of wealthy people heavily funding media outlets in Louisville and other places. And shockingly, those media outlets just stop investigating and stop covering. So it is really deep. But at the end of the day, a 26-year-old African-American woman who was a nurse, no criminal history, who was in bed, has been murdered. There is, we just published a Substack piece on our Substack today about this. There are at least 6-7 major smoking guns that show a cover-up, and the media is more focused on analyzing the handshake between Biden and Putin during the Super Bowl.
I think you really nailed the crux of this story, very similar to Flint, and that's why they're not covering it. Because as soon as you get to the heart of it, which is always about economic advancement for the wealthy, that is when everyone pulls back their ships and say, yeah, we can't touch this anymore. And I think that's always been the case. The reason why Flint has been poisoned is because of gentrification, the desire of the rich to systemically take over a part of our country that had been forgotten since even before the 1980s, basically since the 1960s. And it was just when it was ever going to come to a head. And their attitude of rather than fix the problem is to just tear it down and build it in the image that they want, not what the people need. And this is sort of the same issue here. I never heard of this before. You just said that the reason why Breonna Taylor is dead is because powerful corporate special interests in Louisville wanted to gentrify the last remnants of this particular part of West Louisville. And this guy who happened to be dating Breonna wasn't having it, and they had to find a way to take him out. And in the process,
there's one other layer. Number one, Jamarcus Glover was her ex-boyfriend, not currently dating.
Yes.
But number two, another layer of this cover-up that's just glaring. The Louisville police said that the postal inspector, every city has a postal inspector, had investigated it and confirmed that he was receiving suspicious packages at her apartment. Mm-hmm. The postal inspector comes out later and says, we were never asked to investigate this. We didn't investigate packages coming out of her apartment. So that was the basis of the no-knock warrant to get it signed, that they had evidence that he was receiving packages at her home, allegedly with drugs in them. A separate, outside of Louisville, postal inspector investigated it. They found what was actually in those packages were shoes. So it's like you got postal inspectors.
I'm still not sure how they were able to get a no-knock warrant given what they presented to whatever judge signed a no-knock warrant, because those are really only used in very specific, dangerous situations. Like a no-knock warrant is not something that should just be given. Like that's not a common thing. And I think that we have completely glossed over the fact as to how would they have even gotten that in the first place. That's not an easy thing to get. I don't think people understand that.
Absolutely. And they conjured up, convincing the judge that that package had drugs and she might be harboring drugs. So,
and I still think that that's still in and of itself. No knocks are when you think that somebody is going to escape, somebody is potentially violent, or somebody is going to destroy the evidence if you are there. And given what they presented, none of those circumstances were present. So I still do not understand how they were able to get a no knock in that case.
We're speaking with Jordan Chariton of Status Quo. Jordan, if you could retweet what I just sent you, because I want to bring.
Oh, wait, can you answer this question? Just answer this question so that we can, because I feel like it says, Jordan, have you investigated the 2 million Native Americans without running water? I'm not sure to specifically what that is referring to, but that would not surprise me.
And if he hasn't, donate to Status Quo so they can have more money.
Because I'm sure he'd be happy to go investigate that.
Seriously, this is somebody who actually wants to go in the field and investigate, but it costs money. So if this is a topic that you want covered, and we all know how, I mean, even to this day, again, this is why Deb Haaland gets to be nominated for, get the scent off of them, essentially. So that way people don't actually address where the real problems lie. But Jordan, if you could, obviously there's been this, unfortunate circumstance when it comes to non-corporate progressive media, if you want to call it that, that just kind of get caught up in the whole, what's the sexy topic of the day? How do we get as many clicks as possible? And yet it seems to me that no one other than our good friend Steve Grumbine of Real Progressives has really tried to bring as much attention to this particular issue of the investigative journalism that you're doing. If you want to be different, if you don't want to be part of, as you said, TMZ light, or just a different version of corporate media, even if you aren't getting paid like it, and all you're doing is just, because again, that's what corporate media does. Corporate media is all about clicks. They're not about results. And if you're going to be an independent media channel and all your concern is, how do I get more clicks? Then what are you doing? I really have to question what your ultimate goal is, because it's one thing to deal with a specific topic for a day, a couple of days. Some people are dealing with a particular topic about infighting on social media for weeks now. And to me, that should be a signal to everybody who's involved in this particular medium that is not advancing any of the causes that we're fighting for. What you just revealed to us about Philadelphia, about Joe Manchin, and about Breonna Taylor, everybody should be talking about this every day, because that's the only way that this is going to become a serious topic of conversation, and it's going to potentially lead to results. So please, by all means, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I think this really goes back to 2016. I started seeing this where, listen, a lot of progressives, whether they live online all day or don't, have understandable anger, cynicism, and frustration, and in some cases nihilism. Frankly, I get it because I have the same thing. Trust me. There's no antidepressant strong enough for me based on the shit I see on the road. It's horrible. It's corrupt. It's unjust. And I've cried on the road privately, seeing the stuff I see and the people I talk to. But I think the progressives movement, good-hearted people, not bad people, are becoming consumed with a little bit of cultism. What I mean by that is, I think progressives learned a valuable lesson that you can't put all your hopes and all your apples in one leader, whether it's Bernie, AOC. Nobody is unfallible, whether it's politicians, me, any media figure. But I think what the trend has been online is, I don't even use purity anymore. I think it's cultism. I think for specific hosts that people love and think are righteous and pure and right, if you don't agree with them 1000%, or you're not essentially kissing their ring 1000%, you're a sellout, you're a fraud, you're this, you're that. And I think that's a really, really not only counterproductive and self-sabotaging mentality, but it's just a dangerous mentality. And listen, Jimmy Dore is my friend. I'm just going to name names. Jimmy Dore is my friend. I like him. He's been good to me. I think he's unfairly criticized a lot. I think he's not a conspiracy theorist. He proves a lot of things he says to be true. But he's also not a god. I mean, that's the truth. He's not a god. He's not a king. And I don't agree with everything he does or says. So at the end of the day, you could hate TYT. I think my opinions are not a secret. You could think they're morally bankrupt and corrupt and you want to take them down. I really don't care either way. I mean, they'll succeed or fall based on what they're doing. But to me, there's just this growing trend where people truly believe. And again, I don't even think they're not bad people. People truly are starting to think that the most important topic at hand and the most vital story at hand, and the thing that we need to focus on that is like the holy grail, is covering TYT smearing Aaron Mate, or the Jimmy Dore battle with TYT, or other channels. Literally, I mean, let's just say it, driving this to the bank, clickbait wise. I mean, I think we're on week 4 now. I haven't kept on.
I honestly hate this, and specifically do not like to talk about any of this. I think it's ridiculous. I am so done with these people and their nonsense, and we just plug along and do our thing. I cannot engage with that.
We addressed one thing. We addressed what Anna Kasparian did.
Yes, she was our bootlicker. She was our bootlicker of the week for that comment.
And that was one part of the show, and that needed to be addressed. But this idea that people can just endlessly talk about this stuff like this is, well, like you said, it's like high school. That's not what, if that's what your goal is, then I really question what your long-term plans are, because we're trying to get results. We're trying to get you elevated. We're trying to make these stories the central focus of what this movement is supposed to be about. At least I hope that's what it's about.
Yeah, I think the actual important thing to notice, and I agree with Jen, this is really not about Aaron, Jimmy, or TYT. It's a much deeper problem to me. This isn't about them. This is about literally the progressive movement eating itself alive. That's how the oligarchy has always remained in power. They've divided and conquered. I'm not saying TYT is necessarily capital P progressive. I don't think that. But again, it's not about them. And to me, it's not about Jimmy or Aaron. I've already said my piece on them. I did a live stream yesterday. This is about, people need to get out of this. You're a sellout. You're a fraud. And this minimalist extremist mentality of, to me, just self-sabotage. Bottom line, for example, Dave Weigel from the Washington Post tweeted out supporting my journalism today. I don't like the Washington Post. I've actually criticized Dave Weigel on Twitter. I retweeted him because it's about the stories for me. It's about the reporting for me. It's not about me. I don't give a shit where the elevation comes from. I care that these stories get out there. Kyle Kalinske, for example, him and Mike from the Humanist Report, while we were on this road trip, was literally the only people with an audience that covered, as humbly as I could say it, really important stories that we covered. Yeah. Kyle, specifically during his video covering one of our stories, told his subscribers to subscribe. We got 1,500 subscribers in a day. And
we can't do that for you. We're not going to be able to help you in that way.
We'll do the best.
Okay.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
That's okay. But the point is, you know how many comments came in from old TYT viewers saying, "Oh, we didn't know you're back." We've been on YouTube for 3 years, Jen, Peter.
Yeah.
They never see it for obvious reasons, YouTube. But the point is, just Kyle, who hasn't been embroiled in this fucking endless, Real Housewives of YouTube shit, just him, I didn't even ask him to do it. I guess he saw one of my DMs and did it. Just him doing that helped us get this to more eyeballs. And that's really the point. At the end of the day, if progressives online are so cynical, are so angry, are so frustrated, are so burn it all down, that if I don't or you don't feed you exactly what you want to hear at all times, which, by the way, is the mentality of a Fox News viewer. If we're not in lockstep in agreement on all things, if I had people like, I'm on the road for 2 weeks driving through 4 fucking states on a shoestring budget, working 16 hours a day, and I have people criticizing me because I'm not covering this. Yeah, let me pause from interviewing the homeless people so I could do 10 videos on what we're talking about.
Let me tell you, when I was taking care of some stuff, one of the best videos you did was when you and Jen were driving and you just had the live stream going as you were driving from, I guess, West Virginia to Kentucky. And it's just this endless drive. But you know what? At what point, I think you had like 600-700 people watching. And that's just kind of, that is really being as efficient and as effective as you can be. And for some reason, I don't know why, but I found it very pleasing as you were driving, doing the talking.
That's always been like a really popular thing, even at TYT when we went live in the car, which I've always enjoyed.
Yeah. Oh, listen, I remember when it was, you, me, a lady who we won't name, and Fred Frost. And that was
Fred Frost.
Yeah. One of the best.
I love Fred Frost.
Because that was how it really, that was, I think I don't want to take any credit for it, but that was like something that we kind of just did. And it got really, really popular. Like a lot of people really liked those segments where it was just us driving around, but we were on the road. We were showing people what's really going on. And there's a yearning for that. There's a desire for that, but there is so much suppression. I mean, the suppression is, look, there's many reasons as to why our channel is suppressed. We did a data analysis on our channel not too long ago. We have just under 7,000 subscribers, and yet it's like less than 10% of our subscribers actually get notifications. So it's a really serious problem. And
you don't need to do a data analysis. YouTube CEO openly admitted why you're suppressed.
Wojcicki, she doesn't hide it. I mean, they admit that they're on the take. And so and I think one of the best ways to, wind down this conversation, and the reason why we do bring this up at the end about, the other social media networks, is we really need to be working in concert to highlight the things that are very important. I mean, rising tide lifts all boats, but this is really about focusing on what is important. And even though we're not the biggest channel, we make
we're not the smallest.
No,
but we're not the smallest. So
but we do make a concerted effort to try to lift up as many people as we can, and especially those that are speaking truth to power and actually have the best interests of, what is necessary. And like you were saying before about people being canceled, and even though she is more on the mainstream, I give all the credit in the world to Crystal for, having you on, her coming on your show. She does go out of her way to highlight some of these very important things, as does Kyle, as does Mike Figueredo. We love Mike. Mike was one of the very first people. You were the first person to interview Jen when she ran. The second big platform to interview Jen after she announced her candidacy was Mike Figueredo. You never forget the people who do go out of their way when they don't have to.
But he came to my birthday party this year.
He did. He did. And it's, and
did you see it, Jordan? Did you see my 50th birthday?
I think I was on the road, so I didn't. So
well,
if you haven't had a chance, just go back and watch when Nina.
Okay, but here's the highlight, though.
Yeah.
Okay, highlight of birthday 50, because I feel like it should have a big thing. Chelsea Manning saying happy birthday to me.
Oh, that's nice.
On my live stream. That was the highlight of the 50th birthday for me. That was cool.
There was like a handful of moments during that live stream that really stuck out. First, Jen's reaction to, because I know Nina personally as well, and I was able to.
I would have told you not to bother her.
Yeah, but she came on, and Jen just like, oh my God.
Well, it never gets old. Nina, it never gets old.
Ironically, Vosh was on at the same time, and he was a deer in headlights when he saw Nina on the live stream. Like, he's like, oh my God. And then Bo of the Fifth Column was a deer in headlights when Chelsea Manning
came on.
Like, it was like
a starstruck fest going on. It was kind of cool.
And a lot of people were saying after the fact, wow, you got so many amazing guests on your live stream. And, we just kind of explained to them, it's like, it's because we do what is necessary to try to build an effective coalition where we are spreading this message where everyone can play a part. Everyone can feel like they can accomplish something. A lot of like you said, The nihilism is very real, and a lot of people have simply given up, and that's understandable. But I am not somebody who's going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If somebody believes that the best way to fight is within the Democratic Party, then support them. If somebody believes that the best way to fight is to form a third party, then support them. Don't tear somebody down like a lot of people who are trying to form a third party. All they want to do is tear people down who are trying to fight within the party infrastructure. Like that's not going to solve the problem.
I think another big thing, and this goes back to Jordan, what you were saying about this cult mentality, and something that I just won't even acknowledge anymore. The amount of people that feel the need, and as I'm saying this, I'm seeing the comments coming up about this. The amount of people that feel the need to comment on who I talk to, who I have on my show, whose show I go on, who I affiliate with, whether it's Vosh, whether it's Tim Pool, I don't care who it is. I will talk to anyone if it is going to make the message go further. And the fact that there's people that criticize that shows them out for being frauds. Because if you're about the message, then you're not going to ghost people. And this is ultimately what was my issue with Jimmy Dore. I don't care about any of the other drama. I don't care what he says. I really don't care. I'm a very live and let live. The fact that he ghosted us when we were running on the same issues that he was a proponent of, that indicates fraud to me. You don't get to say, I so believe in Medicare for all that I'm willing to fight with everybody and their mother, but I'm going to ignore the one candidate who's challenging the person who I hate the most. And that's a fraud.
And here's a great example of the one thing. Well, there are some, but this is one particular thing that Jimmy is right about. With the stories that you just shared with us tonight, they are very significant. If Tucker Carlson asked you to come on his show and to talk about these stories, is there anything to think about whether you would go on or not to present these stories to potentially 4 or 5 million people and what that might do, especially since a lot of the people who live in states like Kentucky, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania watch Tucker Carlson, who have no idea that this is going on. And if they did, they might say, why the hell aren't our representatives doing something about this? Why is this allowed to go on? So this whole idea about gatekeeping and policing, we have discussed a particular person who we will not name, who we just will not have anything to do with.
Yeah.
But overall,
there's a lot of those.
There's a lot of those.
You know who it is. You know who it is.
We don't have to say the name.
Yeah.
But there are so many people who have something to bring to the table, even if you do not agree with them 100%.
Yeah. I'll talk to anybody but said person. I really will. I don't care. I mean, yeah.
And I think that is really what needs to happen. So I'm making a pitch right now to every one of you guys out there. Kyle highlighted Jordan's stories. Mike Figueredo has highlighted Jordan's stories.
Yeah.
I have no doubt Crystal and Sagar will highlight these stories. But if you're an independent media and you're not highlighting these stories that Jordan is touching on right now, especially what Joe Manchin is doing, and especially the reason why Breonna Taylor is dead, you have to talk about this. You are almost, if you consider yourself an independent news source or channel, you are obligated to talk about this. This is serious shit. And all you want to do is get clicks. Well, you know what? That's a problem. This is a serious issue. Many serious issues. Yeah. I want Jordan Jordan should be funded the way that TYT was funded.
I'm a funder of Status Coup.
I'm a funder of Status Coup.
Thank you very much.
Any final thoughts before we conclude?
All right, but I have to do a shout out to Banana Booey because of this comment. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, that was all.
That does look lovely this evening, I will say. We just, she does.
Not bad for being in a trailer with no flat iron. I have no flat iron, and I feel like, okay, I could suck it up for a month without a flat iron. So,
it's amazing. She's in Asheville, which is probably one of the few places in the country that probably doesn't have a lot of problems. But I'm willing to bet that there are a lot of surrounding areas in Tennessee and North Carolina that have just the same kind of problems that West Virginia, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, they are dealing with, and it is not getting highlighted. One person who is running for office that I think you should absolutely have on your show is Erica Smith. She is running for the U.S. Senate in North Carolina, and she is a total progressive, non-corporate candidate. And the reason I would highlight her is because she actually does have name recognition. She was a 3-term state senator in West Virginia. That's on your mind, but in North Carolina. And that does matter. That definitely helps, especially if you're trying to win. And she has there's 100 counties in North Carolina. She has that 100 county strategy, similar to kind of like what John Fetterman is trying to do right now in Pennsylvania. These are the people who truly need to be highlighted. And Jordan Chariton's work is what needs to be highlighted.
Look, Jordan, we got you a member.
Thank you, Blue Bandit.
That's Blue Bandit's one of our regulars.
Thank you, Blue Bandit.
Thank you very much. We're
actually having our members call tomorrow night, 7:30. So
we had one last night, but only Peter and me and John showed up. So we ended up having a staff meeting.
When we get to 100,000 subscribers like Status Quo, I'm sure we will have quite the few people that will attend the meeting. But you should attend the call tomorrow night. And if you're on the call, that might even attract more people to come on. Be like, oh my God, Jen and Jordan, a team.
I don't know why you think that people know me like they know him.
Let's just say I have a lot to say on that call. So
see, that should be
I've never been on a members call. I should go. I should.
check you'll get the Zoom link if you're a member. I mean, I'll just end by, I really think that people need to understand. I don't really care what you call yourself: progressive, socialist, neoliberal, conservative, marshmallow. That's irrelevant to this point. People need to understand that we're in a two-prong information war. Suppression kind of understates it. We're in a two-prong information war. And that war on one end is what it's always been. One army is the corporate media that, to me, has done more to rig elections than any foreign government. To me, in addition to Bernie Sanders' numerous mistakes, a large reason he lost was MSNBC and CNN stuffing, suburban white people's minds.
Jordan, let's call it what it is. They made Pete Buttigieg. They made
yes.
All right, let him finish.
They stuffed down everybody's throats. Biden's the pragmatic choice. Bernie's a radical. Biden will win in the Midwest. Bernie won't. Bernie's a socialist. They'll kill him. Biden's folksy. This was on and on and on for a year. And particularly when Bernie was on the verge of clinching the nomination, they cheerleaded for Biden when Obama rigged the whole thing and got everybody to drop out. So you got the corporate media on one end, not to mention, literally the Iowa caucus, which was actual election fraud. And the media just, Pete won. Cheers. So that's one thing. So you have an information war coming from literally corporations that have hijacked the media. That's what corporate media means. Corporations have hijacked the journalistic structure. On the other end, you have a new development over the last 3 years. You have Silicon Valley and big tech literally erasing, for all intents and purposes, journalism, independent journalism. I'll give you a perfect example. This is not to criticize Crystal. She literally openly admits this. Everybody loves Crystal Ball. I really like Crystal Ball. I appreciate her having me on. If Crystal Ball and Sagar didn't start at the Hill, there's a good chance the majority of their subscribers would have never seen them. If they would have just started as Generational Change or Status Quo,
they'd be us.
Yeah. There is a very good chance you would have never seen them, just like we are now getting old TYT viewers of mine who never saw Status Quo for 3 years, but just found us because Kyle.
Where have you been, Jordan? Where have you been all these years?
Right. So it's not I'm not taking away from them because they do a great job. And obviously look at what, the Hill Rising has become. It's really fallen off. But at the end of the day, being with a national corporate media outlet, which, by the way, their videos were also embedded into articles on the hill.com website, which is heavily trafficked, they shot through the roof very quickly. They literally lapped Kyle, who's been doing this for, I think, 10 years, maybe longer.
Yeah, 2010.
So why is that important? Again, not taking anything away from them. because they had that amazing head start due to the rigged algorithm that when they left the Hill, they already had that major audience that they could then move to a growing email list, which on top of it, because they were at the Hill, whatever, and it was being stuffed in people's feeds, got the attention of people like Joe Rogan and this and that, and on we go. So doesn't mean they're not great, but what it does mean is you literally have, algorithm is a fancy word for the puppet strings. You literally have puppet strings on top of supposedly free, democratic information delivery systems that are pulling for the status quo and bottling up anti-war voices, anti-capitalist voices, anti-fossil fuel voices, and any form of actual journalism that goes in the field. That's clear from what's happening to status quo. So if your focus is not on that and is instead on, yes, the TMZ-ification of independent media, and I don't really care if people cancel me or whatever, that's what it is. And food fights between people, even though I believe Aaron and certain people had a right to defend themselves and whatever, initial coverage, like Peter said, was warranted. But if you don't understand that we are not going to get any progressive change, Medicare for all, no. Green New Deal, no. Banning fracking, no. Ending private prisons, no. Actual reform on money in politics, no. Reparations for black people, forget it. Ending qualified immunity, I could go on and on and on. If you think any of that stuff is going to happen, if the progressive movement does not come together instead of canceling everybody that doesn't agree 1,000%, if you think any of those things are going to happen merely by taking TYT down, who I could care less if they live or die, if you think any of those things are going to happen merely by protesting outside Nancy Pelosi's office or Mitch McConnell's office or Sunrise Movement doing protests in DC, those are all great. But by completely ignoring the actual structure that's propping up this corrupt status quo, which is CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Associated Press, Daily Beast, BuzzFeed, and a lot of local media outlets, because I could give you horror stories about local media in Flint and elsewhere, including the Sun Sentinel that screwed Jen.
Oh, please. I that's a trash rag. Yeah.
So if you think, I'm not talking about violence. If you think only focusing on protesting politicians, only focusing on protesting BlackRock and Blackstone, only focusing on those things, but leaving these journalists free and comfortable, why aren't there people storming the gates of the New York Times? To be clear, outside, not storming like the Capitol.
Non-violently, in a non-violent manner.
Right. Why? I remember literally one protest in 2016 outside CNN's Los Angeles bureau with Bernie Sanders supporters. Since then, has there been any protest outside MSNBC on Rachel Maddow's Russiagating while ignoring everything else? Has there been any protest on the manufacturing consent in 2020 for Biden and Pete and Kamala and Beto and whoever was the establishment star of the week and the lies about Bernie? Nothing. You are ignoring the single structure that more than anybody else, more than the banks, more than the lobbyists, more than the real estate developers, more than the pharmaceutical companies, the media is what maintains the status quo. It is what brainwashes, frankly, not all older viewers, because there's a lot of older progressives. Most normie Democrats are brainwashed. I know a lot of them because of the media. If you are going to solely focus on, in my view, the Real Housewives of independent media, then we are going to be in the political wilderness for a very long time, probably long after we're all gone. And I just know from having, and by the way, I don't keep talking about how I go on the field because I think I'm better than anyone else. I think there's a role for everybody. It doesn't make me better because I go out there and somebody does a show from a studio. But the point is, if you have a big platform and your focus is on food fights, or if you have a small platform and you're fucking engulfing yourself in that food fight to build your audience and go for cheap clicks, then shame on you, because you ain't acting as a actual person who wants progressive change. You're just an opportunist who's trying to build a channel and get clicks. And I'll tell you what, I firmly believe this, and then I'll end my monologue. If the progressive movement and progressive media would come together and elevate each other, you actually can counter the corporate media. But if we keep doing what we're doing now, we are going to continue this same cycle of candidates that give us hope and corporations, politicians, and media companies coming together to sabotage them.
I think that this statement by Midnight Postman is absolutely correct. 100% bravo to you. The algorithm is fueling the TMZ-ification of progressive media by pushing views and rewarding the food fights. Exactly. They want us fighting. They don't want us getting along. So the more they know that this is also the thing. You do understand that the CIA is in everything, and they are in YouTube. And so they are going to look for anything that is going to cause dissension. This type of thing causes dissension. It causes dividing lines, and they're going to amplify it. In fact, without naming any channels, you're almost at the point now where you kind of need to tell them, you do understand the only reason you're growing is because the powers that be want this type of stuff, because you're not talking about stuff that's actually going to change what's currently happening.
Bingo.
If you think that they're not looking for like certain words to just say, oh yeah, they're talking about that. Perfect. Juice it, baby. That's going to get people talking, and that's going to get the whole thing about sell out this, not important topic that. And even though we might get, hopefully, over 1,000 views on this particular video between Mike Siegel and Julie Oliver, and obviously you coming on, we do want to highlight the importance, the sheer importance of these topics. We were just talking the other day. We had our, team call, if you will. And the next show we're hoping to do on Monday, knock on wood if it works out, we want to talk about a very significant solution to our economic problems, which is UBI versus a federal jobs guarantee. We want to have Steve come on, and we want to have Tom from Nerds for Humanity come on and talk about this very significant thing, which is, what is the best path right now to dealing with the homeless crisis? Is it UBI? Is it a federal jobs guarantee? Is it both? This is the type of stuff we need to be talking about.
Well, we only talk about normal issues. Like, that's all we do. I'm not getting engaged in that ridiculousness. We have a lot of cool, I try to cover important topics and get people that are knowledgeable. How complicated is that to do?
We were talking with a team member the other day about, what could we do to really increase the viewership on our channel? And he gave us one simple answer. Talk about the drama. I'm like, well, we're not doing that. Well, we're not doing that. But it's true. And that is unfortunately what sells. Cannot emphasize enough, guys. Investigative journalism is one of the last bastions of our Constitution that is still alive and still has value. Barely, not much, but it's still there. And freedom of the press is slowly but surely dying unless we band together to lift it up. I think we can all agree, as I've said before, when it comes to foreign investigative journalism, Aaron Mate is as good as it gets.
Well, we love the Gray Zone. I mean, look, the guys at the Gray Zone do seriously good work. That's all good.
When it comes to domestic, give Abby Martin credit too. She's pretty awesome as well.
Of course. Absolutely.
But when it comes to domestic investigative journalism, nobody is doing more important or better work, for that matter, than Jordan, Jen, and John at Status Coup. They are kicking butt and taking names. Jordan,
guys, check out Status Coup.
Statuscoup.com. Please go there. If you are not a subscriber to the Status Coup channel, please subscribe, click the bell, watch some videos, like, comment, and share, like we ask you to do with our wonderful channel. And if you haven't yet become a very important Patreon to Generational Change, it's patreon.com/generational change. We obviously would appreciate as we are highlighting more and more people so that we can grow our channel, so that way we can have a bigger audience to talk about topics like this.
Yeah.
That we highlighted. Jordan, the floor is yours to close. Please let us know what you're working on now and where you might be on the road again in the near future.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me on. And I'll say real quick, as somebody who knows the feeling, it can get disheartening doing this kind of work while seeing other people getting 1,000 live viewers on bullshit. So I just want to say, to me, it's very admirable that you're covering these stories, knowing that it is frankly not in your business sense or in your, numbers sense to do it. I mean, literally, if I would have done in 2016 or 2017, instead of covering Flint and all these other things and just did 40 videos a week on Trump and Russia, I'd probably be over 1 million subscribers by now. So I admire that you guys are doing it the right way. And to me, yeah, you could get the numbers that others have, but if there's not purpose with it, it's all for nothing. So I really admire what you're doing. As far as us, I can't really fit that into one sentence because I'm working on 17 things at once. Right now, I'm currently don't have a date, but thinking of going to Minnesota to cover the protests for Line 3 against the Enbridge pipeline going through native land in northern Minnesota. Not that it's exactly like Standing Rock, but it definitely has kind of that feel. And I actually couldn't go. They had a treaty gathering thing. I had a doctor's appointment that I had waited for months that I couldn't change. But I'd like to go there because I think it's important. Beyond that, we're doing some investigative stuff. We have a Substack now, so we're trying to expand through written stuff, so not just videos. So kind of working on mansion, evictions, a lot of different stuff. We're also having conversations kind of in the background, which I might talk about on our members call tomorrow, hint, hint, to do more collaboration with some of the people we spoke to today. So I'm looking, hopefully I'll have something to announce on that. And next week, I kind of barely mentioned it, but next week we are premiering a 1 week exclusive on Rockfin. Exclusive with Rockfin. We're starting next week. I don't exactly know the day, so I'm not marketing right. We'll know the day probably tomorrow, but we're doing a once a week exclusive on Rockfin, which number one is guaranteed income for us, but number two, if we grow to a certain level, can really be extra income for us that helps us do even more of the in the field reporting we just did for 2 weeks. So I'm looking forward to starting on Rockfin. We're actually premiering with something we did during this road trip where we have like an hour recording of us going door to door with Democratic Socialists of America volunteers as they did what the government should be doing, knocking on doors of people facing eviction and giving them legal resources and knowing their rights. I interviewed one of those people facing eviction as well as DSA volunteers. It was a rainy day in Cleveland. So they were doing good work. So we'll be premiering that on Rockfin, I think Wednesday, but don't quote me on that. So Substack, Rockfin, possibly Line 3. We do have, I've been saying this for a while, so my viewers are getting mad at me. We do have an explosive Flint story soon to come out. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with corporate outlets, it usually gets slowed down and stuck. But I kind of lit a fire into this one outlet that it needs to get out ASAP. So I'm hoping that gets out. To me, this story that we're about to break on Flint, and I don't even know. Yeah, I don't even know how I could describe it. It's so corrupt.
Just stay
Well,
safe.
I'm just still waiting to see Snyder in handcuffs. Like, I'm not understanding this situation. Like, this is ridiculous to me already. Like, ridiculous. And only because that's the one we know about. But, I mean, there's how many Flints are there, really? I mean, there's so many. I'm sure of it. We just don't know.
You might see a lot more people in handcuffs after this story. Let's put it that way.
I hope so, because I don't understand why they're not. Like, I'm floored by that.
This speaks to the bigger issue of why Trump doesn't go down, why a lot of these other people don't go down, because, again, it's cliche, but Carlin said it's a big club and you're not in it. And if one of them goes, they all go. I still maintain that the reason why Wasserman Schultz is still in power is because she was the head of the party for 6 years as the chair. And when you know every single dirty detail about everything that goes on, it's basically your little black book. It's your get out of jail free card. If I go, you're all coming with me. I'm not protecting anybody. So it's much as they are protecting each other, they are, but they're only protecting each other because they're protecting a corrupt system that they all immensely benefit from. It's really, I like I said, that's why I do sympathize to a degree with the new members who are non-corporate going in. Do I think there's someone engulfed by the new surroundings? Yes. But I think that they're deathly afraid to step out because they understand that they are marked people. They really are. They do not want them there. But the last thing I will mention, as much as the squad is not necessarily doing what we would like them to do and probably could be doing more than they are doing, getting Nina Turner into Congress, I cannot emphasize enough how important that is. We also have personal relationships with her. She is very near and dear to us. I believe she is the heir to Bernie's movement. I believe she is the one person of this movement who could become president in 7 years. And I know you say, well, that's a long way down the road. It is. But you know what? Guys like Pete Buttigieg plan 7 years in advance. So with that said,
he plans 15 years in advance. Yeah.
Seriously. So for the people who gave Jordan crap about not going hard enough on Nina, let me just assure you that the same people who did that to you are the same people who gave Jen crap about after we hosted a Assange telethon.
Yeah.
I
got a question on that tonight from one of the trolls.
There you go. So for 10 seconds, she said, I really want Nina to get into Congress, and I don't think it would be in her best interest to dip her feet into the Assange story right now. Do you guys not see? And again, we have one more segment to do when Jordan goes, and that is our bootlicker of the week.
Oh,
which is
yeah,
we're going to be highlighting as we go forward. Do you not understand that Nina really is the key to so much of this?
But
and that
can I please just clarify? I never said that Nina should not support Julian Assange. I simply said that she shouldn't participate in a telethon while campaigning for Congress.
And all of these people that are coming after you in a cult-like way saying, how come you didn't push Nina on this? How come you didn't fight back on her like this and that? And it's like, out of a 5-hour live stream, 5 hours is what we did for the Assange telethon. They highlighted a 10-second clip, and that is all they talked about.
This is what I'm talking about in terms of the cult and sellout and extremism.
Right? And I still stand by that. I think if you're running for Congress, that probably participating in a Julian Assange telethon is not the smartest move. I'm sorry. I just don't think it is.
I think, listen, I said after, I don't, it doesn't bother me if people thought I went soft. I mean, I'm a journalist. You're open to criticism. That's fine. I also thought I had a half hour and they started wrapping me in 15 minutes. Yeah. So I actually was going to ask her about her Assange. I was going to ask her about Israel-Palestine, and I was going to ask her about defund the police because most people don't know, but her husband was a police officer and her son, I believe, was a police officer. But putting all that aside, what I was really talking about is, do people online really prefer like Nina Turner going scorched earth in the most blue establishment district, one of the most blue establishment districts in America? Literally, Marcia Fudge, who was the congressman there, and now her seat is open. That's why there's an election. She won by 60 percentage points over the Republican. 60 points over the Republican.
They did the same thing to Jen. Wasserman Schultz's people did the exact same thing.
They said that if I won the primary, we would lose in the general.
We were very fortunate that Jen, listen, there were a lot of people in Wasserman Schultz's circle that actually don't really care for her and, were tipping us off in certain points. And one of them tipped us off that, basically they're going around telling all Democratic voters, you can't vote for Perlman. She's a liability. If she wins the primary, a GOP is going to win in a double-digit blue district, mind you, that this is now a vulnerable seat. But again, they don't really have much. They're going to do what they're going to do. And listen, if you guys think that Clyburn is the last person coming out, and I'm not even going to dignify.
All right, but let's save that for bootlicker.
Yeah, we're going to save that. But my point is, if you think that's the last one coming out against Nina Turner, you wait, because a possible former president may be waiting in the wings as well to come and try to stab the progressive movement in the heart. He may just be waiting for the right moment.
All right, I can't even talk about Obama.
The last thing I'll go, because I got to spend time with my wife. The last thing I'll say is, people need to decide if they want change or a cult. Do you want change or a cult? I actually said after the interview with Nina Turner, yes, she dodged several things. It didn't surprise me, because if she attacked Joe Biden, if she attacked the Democratic Party, how do people understand in that district how quickly the attack ads would have been up?
Oh, yeah.
And how quickly they would have essentially Bernie Sandered Nina Turner. She's not a Democrat. She is divisive. She's attacking a black woman in Chantel Brown, who's her chief opponent. Do you understand that sometimes you have to be strategic and maybe not as fire breathing and pure to get in the door to actually fight. Now, I don't worship Nina Turner. If she gets elected and then does what the squad is currently doing, I'll be the first one to criticize her and challenge her. But like, she's not running for president, congresswoman of YouTube, running for congresswoman of the 11th district. And if she were to do the things that the naysayers said she should have said, she'd be tanking right now.
Oh, yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And the James Clyburn endorsement would have been a lot more effective because they'd be using attacks on her that she's not a real Democrat. She's basically a Trojan horse for the Republicans and, the usual. So I think people need to wake the fuck up. Just because the squad is disappointing you and you're frustrated and angry about the squad, so am I. Don't blanket it over Nina Turner and anybody else who runs with a D. Look at the person, not the letter. And none of us have a crystal ball. We don't know if Nina Turner, because she's not being fire breathing like she was on a campaign trail supporting a presidential candidate, and she's tweaking her message. Frankly, Bernie should have tweaked his fucking message. He was sitting on 60 Minutes. On the verge of the nomination, and he took the bait on Fidel Castro. I know from many people I spoke with in his campaign, they were fucking horrified. He should have said, I'm not running for president of Cuba. I'm running for president of the United States. And I want to talk directly to a lot of your viewers who might be closer to my age, because some things have been said about me that I'd like to clarify.
Yeah.
That was his opportunity to reach these older normie Democrats, and he didn't tweak his message. So great. He was righteous and right on Fidel Castro, and they used it against him for 5 days. So I think people need to wake the fuck up, excuse my French, and realize it's not about Nina Turner. It's not about the squad. It's about, do you want people? She's not, as far as I can tell, she hasn't moved back from one policy during this campaign. She was up 35 points running ads on Medicare for all. So you care about the policy, or you care about having your fucking fire breathing righteousness fed to you on a plate at all times of the day? It's just insanity. And I think people need to just grow up.
Yeah.
So that's what I think.
Thank you, Jordan.
Great as always. Thank you, my friend. We'll be seeing each other soon, and we definitely want to have you back the next time you're on the road. Open invitation. You know that. And, we're happy to, swing by, on your channel if you ever need us. And
if you need us. Yes. If you need us.
I will gladly have you. Yes.
See, there you go. Not at his beck and call, but, at some point. But guys, remember statuscoup.com.
Right.
Follow Jordan Chariton both on Twitter, and you're on Substack now. So follow the writing.
We're Status Substack. Substack.
Yeah. And yes, Jordan is fantastic, and he's an even more fantastic friend. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Yeah, I mean, again, we could talk for hours, kind of like with certain guests that we have on, but it's true. Highlighting the importance of not allowing perfection to be the enemy of good, but then very often you have to wonder if there are some, intentions, as Jordan highlighted, the whole idea of nihilism. Maybe some people just don't care anymore, and they don't, maybe Nina could potentially be a leader of a progressive movement in a way Bernie either wasn't.
I just think that we need to just deal with, if you're working within the system, you're in the system. So it is what it is. We cannot run any other way than as a Democrat. But listen, it's really late, so let's do our bootlicker.
There is no question that we both agree that Nina is the heir to Bernie's movement. It is not AOC. It is not anybody else. If Nina gets to Congress, then it's officially on in terms of building a movement behind her and how far that can be taken, because she does take chances. And the fact that the establishment is coming after her in a way that they never came after other candidates. This is a serious race now. And not because her opponent, because again, like I said, I'm not dignifying giving even her name attention, because she doesn't.
No, don't. That's ridiculous.
This is a candidate who literally has gone to national media outlets saying, I need a super PAC.
I need a super PAC stat. Get me
What is
money.
that? You know what that tells me? I'm not that popular where I'm running, so I need you to manufacture my popularity for me. That's what she's admitting, is that she's trying to manufacture her popularity. And that is a very big problem when you consider, as we were discussing, there are a lot of people who still fall under this guise of corporate media is going to tell me what to do, and I'm going to listen, and I'm not going to question anything. And let's face it, they're not supporting the person who's running against Nina because they think she's a wonderful candidate or because they believe.
They would have found somebody out of obscurity to run against Nina.
And this is an extremely establishment district. So having the fact that Nina is that far ahead, I think speaks to the fact that she was a very good state senator. Name recognition goes a very long way. She has deep roots within the community, and they know she's good people. Now, she may not be in the in crowd like like other people that they support, but she's got a lot of respect across a lot of different avenues.
Let's talk about Jim.
So a lot of people would agree, and maybe this was just, it was unavoidable. And maybe Bernie and his team did not do enough either to try to prevent it from happening or dealing with it at the time. But most people agree that the election swung when Clyburn endorsed Biden right before the South Carolina primary. And it just became sort of this avalanche situation. Clyburn endorses Biden. Biden crushes in South Carolina. And then it's Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Beto. I don't know who else I'm.
But this is not the first time that we're seeing this kind of crap. This is the same kind of crap we saw when the Congressional Black Caucus endorsed Eliot Engel over Jamal Bowman.
Correct.
And when people look at someone like this, so this is someone who you would expect would be working toward the best interest of the Black community.
And not only that, but again, when we ran, we didn't get a lot of key endorsements, but the county Black Caucus did endorse Jen. And as soon as that happened, the Congressional Black Caucus endorsed Wasserman Schultz. And I have no doubt that birds of a feather flock together, and a representative like Jim Clyburn makes it very difficult. Because if you look at the responses on social media, when people talk about Jim Clyburn, it's very similar to how they talk about John Lewis. They're talking about a person that they think is still the same person that they were 60 years ago. And they're not. They are a different person now. And they have different viewpoints. They're not fighters like they once were. They're corporate captured. Jim Clyburn has taken over $1 million in big pharma money in the last decade. That's amazing. That means in 5 election cycles, he's taken an average of for a congressional race, $200,000 in just big pharma money. That's amazing.
So what you're saying is he's more concerned with big pharma than his people.
I think what doesn't get talked about enough, and this is kind of the issue that we haven't really dived into enough when it comes to somebody like Alcee Hastings, is that part of the reason why a lot of these old timers don't step away is because it's not just them. It's a cottage industry. There's no question that there could be dozens and dozens of people who rely on these elected representatives. Maybe it's in the hundreds. This is their livelihood, and this is their golden goose. And they prop up that golden goose like there's no tomorrow. And while our corrupt system suppresses and hurts tens of millions of people, there are also a lot of people who benefit from it. And they benefit mightily from it. And you better believe that, especially for people who have a substantial living based on a system that doesn't really require them to do very much or create anything of substance, you better believe they are going to fight tooth and nail to keep it exactly the way it is. Jen and I have the luxury of not relying on this podcast for a living. And that gives us the freedom to say what we have to say. But a lot of people in different corners of politics, Jim Clyburn just happens to be one of the worst because he's still considered a man of commands respect. But
not
he's no,
not on this graphic. He doesn't.
but he is no different than anybody else. He is as corporate captured as any representative in politics. And I don't give a damn what the color of your skin is if you think that this man is helping people of color. He isn't. Not at all. 50 years ago? Yeah, probably. Not anymore.
But that is something that we find to be pretty typical amongst, like, especially the civil rights era people. They seem to have stopped fighting for civil rights.
I like to bring this up anytime somebody questions the validity and the swag, if you will, of anti-Maxine. Maxine Waters is the reason why the best progressive representative, in my opinion, in Congress today, which is Katie Porter, she is no longer on the finance committee because of Maxine Waters. She's the person who removed her. This does not get covered. It doesn't get covered. And why would it? Maxine's good for the white, comfortable liberal in the suburbs. They love to prop her up. They don't want to talk about what really goes on. People like living in a fantasy because that's what it is for a lot of people. It's a fantasy. We can't live in a fantasy anymore. You know what reality is? The 3 stories that Jordan Chariton just covered on our show. That's reality. That's what people are living with. You think Nina Turner's primary opponent, gives a damn about the people of that district, or would give a damn about them, especially if she gets to Capitol Hill? She gives a damn about her career. That's it. And let me tell you something. It is a very lucrative career to be a congressional representative. I don't think anybody on the surface, they know that it is an incredible career, but most people really don't know the type of perks that comes with it. The comped lifestyle. This is why Charlie Crist is running for governor again.
I can't, you know what? Yeah.
4 times.
And it'll be fun to watch him lose again.
It is amazing.
All right. So listen, we got to wrap because I'm losing it.
But I do think we are breaking through. This has been one of the more productive shows, and amazingly, we did 3+ hours.
I feel it. I'm feeling it.
Now you're feeling it because it's time to go. But I think overall, we really covered a lot of important stuff. We'll have a lot of clips to share. We hope you guys enjoyed the podcast tonight. And, we wanted to highlight Jim Clyburn for a while. Hey, Selfie. We wanted to highlight Clyburn because he's done a lot of things. But now he's come for Nina. And there is nobody more important in this movement right now than Nina Turner. There just isn't.
Mess with Nina, you mess with us.
Everybody should be treating this like a life or death thing. It's not a guarantee yet, but there is a reasonable possibility one or both of us will go up to Cleveland for the home stretch of the election to help Nina.
And I want to say about this. So we'll be having, we are in the process right now of formulating a really good discussion with a couple of people that I think you'll find very interesting. We are looking at bringing Tara Reid and Lindsay Boylan on the show. We're not sure if we'll be able to do them at the same time, but one of the things we are going to definitely do a panel about is harassment and predatory behavior, and especially in the political arena. And when we're talking, and so if you want to talk Andrew Cuomo, we're going to get all into that.
Yeah,
because these are predators. These people are predators.
But you know what? And let's leave on a positive note. And yes, getting Nina elected in 5 weeks is absolutely essential.
And I think we'll be there. I mean, look, we're talking about going up. We're going to have, we have a group of people from South Florida. My campaign volunteers, there's a team of them that are going to be going up. And we're going to help them with a house, and they're going to be helping Nina's team during the last week. And we're talking about whether or not we're going to go. Like, I'm not sure exactly what we're doing.
We'll try to figure out what we can do, which in the best interest of what Nina needs, what we're capable of doing. I have stuff to do. Jen's got stuff to do. We're very grateful that there are people who are part of our team that are going to go up there. But if you live in Pittsburgh, if you live in Lexington, Kentucky, if you live in Detroit, if you live in Indianapolis, if you have the ability to get to Cleveland, if you're in Columbus, if you're in Cincinnati, make the trip. Could always use extra help. don't leave anything to chance.
Yeah.
Because the corporate establishment is not taking chances now. And the point is, if you think Clyburn's the last noted person who's going to endorse Nina or endorse against Nina, then you haven't been paying attention, because it's coming. Do I think Obama?
Now, the Hillary one, I was thankful, because if Hillary endorses, then it's a good fundraising day. So, like,
Yes,
that
it
was.
is. But if Obama endorses against Nina, well, let's put it this way. If Obama does endorse against Nina, that's going to create a serious divide. It's going to be very, very bad.
He just keeps sinking further and further to the bottom of my shit list.
I think that I think that they're probably going to have to walk a very fine line with her being a black woman with very strong roots in the Cleveland area for them to do something like that, because that's going to upset a lot of people. I think that there are people that are upset about this.
I can't understand how black people aren't upset about Jim Clyburn.
I'm sure that there are, but there's also a lot who are not. And a lot of people who live in that district watch CNN and MSNBC.
It's true. Well, it is an older district. It is an older district. That's the truth.
Just like ours is.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in this district, listen, one of the best decisions we made, unfortunately, it was late in the campaign because we weren't, we didn't raise a lot of money. But when we were able to get our ads on Cuomo and Maddow, that's when people, like the super voters, that's when people started noticing our campaign. Money matters. It does.
Yeah.
And Nina is very fortunate that money's not the issue here. It's really just a question of, can she convince enough of these normie Dem lifers who are extremely establishment oriented in thinking to take a chance? And luckily, she has very strong roots in that area.
What do we have coming up? What do we have coming up?
Well, we don't have any set plans for Monday. I will inform you guys as soon as I know. But what we would like to do is have a economic discussion about UBI and a federal jobs guarantee.
Right. Not a debate. I mean, really just sort of a discussion. I mean, there's several schools that thought about it, and we really want to do it from a, trying to come up with a really good plan, not from trying to create, arguing. So that's something we're working on for Monday. And then next Thursday, we have a show already, right?
We have a very big guest coming on next Thursday.
I'm very excited about that.
Well, you can share. Who have you
Okay, so next Thursday, we will be speaking with Ray McGovern, who is a whistleblower. He is with VIPS. Veteran, what does VIPS stand for? I forget. But basically, it's the whistleblowers that were in CIA and that now are the people that basically are the reason that we know what we know. But I'm very looking forward to it. He's sort of in my mind, like I think of him how I think of Medea. Like these are just people that are fighting the good fight and that have been doing it for years and speaking truth to power. And we also have a candidate coming on Thursday, right? Is that right? Shervin Azami?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe he's running in California as well. Got a lot of California running.
So on Thursday, we already have a candidate set and Ray McGovern. You guys should check that out. We will have something
covered, but we got to figure out Monday. So Monday.
We will, guys. We always come up with something good.
We do. We hope you guys enjoyed it tonight. Tonight's been a really, really impressive show, I must say. I think we've really covered a lot of important topics, and we really appreciate you guys sticking around. It does help to have, help from your friends, if you will. Jordan is a great friend, and certainly bringing in more of his audience so they can see what we're trying to do is important. Because again, we're not trying to, we would love to be a major show, but we're only going to do it honestly. We're not going to take any shortcuts. We're not going, again, we're very fortunate that we've been platformed by bigger channels. But overall, everything that we have done is based on the content that we think is going to be most beneficial to everybody. So we hope you enjoyed it. We'll have the clips up as soon as possible. A lot of important topics covered tonight. Share it far and wide. Like, comment, subscribe to Generational Change.
And if you guys are not Patreons, do you have show the Lulu sticker?
One more time.
No, you're going to just keep showing it. Okay. All patrons, if you subscribe a $5 or $10 Patreon, until supplies last, you get the Lulu Generational Change sticker with your other merch. $5 Patreons get the purple and orange handmade hemp bracelets that we have from According to Macy on Etsy. Shout out to her. And then also, if you're a $10 patron, you get the Generational Change jerseys, which are really cool. We wear them on Mondays, so you could check that out. But
Yes.
yeah, guys, be Patreons if you can. We really need the help.
Yes, we really do need the help. And again, this affords us the opportunity to do things like send assistance to Nina Turner for the home stretch of her election.
Yeah.
Because again, we are a 100% grassroots funded channel, and we don't have the corporate algorithm working in our favor. It'd be lovely, but even then, if we did,
and we'll cover and talk about whatever it is we want to, and certain topics get defunded. Certain things are not going to be able to do well, but that doesn't mean we don't talk about them. We just have to, figure a way around it.
We have Ray McGovern and Chevron Azami for next Thursday.
And we will have something cool Monday. Hopefully a really good economic discussion, UBI versus jobs guarantee.
That's our plan. We'll hopefully get it confirmed soon enough. Steve Grumbine is a good friend of the show, as is Tom from Nerds of Humanity. So let's just hopefully, knock on wood, be able to get it squared away. And I think it'll be an excellent topic of discussion that really needs to have this hasn't really been done yet. I haven't seen
I'll most likely be very confused, but that's okay.
That's okay. That's why we'll bring the experts in to share with us what we need to know.
That's when Jason says, just smile and look pretty.
Yeah, well, hey, whatever brings the eyeballs to the channel so more people can learn and share. So that said,
all right, bye guys.
We'll see you Monday.
Peace out.